What's up, everyone? Join me as we dive into A Divorced Evil Lady Bakes Cakes. Make sure to subscribe and let's dive in. The Duke calmly announces the divorce and immediately hands over the document, inviting his wife to read it. The main character reads that the marriage between Raymond Vaughn and Erin de Brescia has been officially declared invalid by mutual consent of the parties. The most noble lady of the empire, Erin von Loewensberg, descended from a once great family and became a duchess, ruining the life of a young woman who had truly loved a duke. In the eyes of society, she was considered a respectable wife, but behind her back, she was accused of shameless infidelity. This is the story of the famous villain and her return to life as Erin de Brescia. In her youth, the main character dreamed of a fairy tale life with a happy ending, where the unfortunate lady marries the prince and lives happily ever after. When the girl came of age, a messenger from the imperial palace reported that His Majesty wished to see the young Lady Brescia as the bride of the Duke of Loewensberg. Hearing this, the young lady decided that her dream had finally come true. The Duke of Loewensberg was the son of the late heir and the eldest grandson of the emperor, a talented, educated swordsman with a pleasant appearance and an impeccable reputation. Erin's father asks the messenger why his daughter was chosen. He replies that the empire currently lacks noble women of suitable age and higher birth than marquises. After the marquisate's decline, Erin's parents, burdened with debt, all but disappeared from social life. The messenger adds that, in exchange for their consent, His Highness promised the family financial support. This proposal sparked nasty rumors in high society. Despite them, the heroine agreed to marry the prince, believing the messenger's words and hoping for a happy marriage. The girl thinks that a successful union will benefit her family and will finally allow her parents to live without need. Raymond declares that it is a great honor for him to take such a beautiful young lady as his wife. When she sees him for the first time, the main character decides that he seems like a kind and sweet person, but the very next day, her illusions are shattered. On the long-awaited first night, Raymond says that he does not intend to share the wedding night with her and calls their union just a formality. The Duke leaves the girl alone with her thoughts and never returns. She later learns that he had had a mistress from a lesser noble family since his teenage years. It was common knowledge in high society that he had promised to make this woman empress, and when the rumors reached the emperor, he immediately arranged an engagement. The girl learned the truth too late. For 9 years, she showed no jealousy, did not touch her husband's mistress, and behaved with restraint and dignity. As a duchess, Erin avoided anything that could tarnish her name, but wanting a divorce, the Duke accused her of infidelity. Having done nothing wrong in the eyes of society, the main character suddenly became a villain and understood that the will of the emperor deprived her of the right to object. Raymond says she can cry and beg anyone she wants, but it won't change anything, and her suffering doesn't bother him. Erin calmly replies that she understands everything and asks if she needs to sign, surprising the Duke. Erin adds that if he is going to marry his mistress, the palace will need repairs, since she sold everything that could be sold, and her chambers are now empty. The Duke is shocked, and the heroine explains that the new wife would have thrown out the old furniture anyway, so she got rid of it that morning. The girl asks why he is so surprised, reminding him that he himself gave her permission to dispose of things as she sees fit. The Duke notes that since their union was a deal, she cannot count on a dowry, and asks what she plans to do with this money. Erin replies that for 9 years he didn't care about her life, but now, with the divorce, he suddenly became interested. At that moment, she thinks that what he calls a trifle was a fortune for her family, and she remembers the dream of opening a cafe, long buried in her heart. These thoughts fill her with the sensation of the sweet aroma of round, ruddy profiteroles. She remembers how her mother baked these sweets, and how, as a child, she eagerly awaited this moment, admiring the tenderness that melted in her mouth. Her mother had once told her in confidence that their family had a particularly refined taste, and that Erin, like blood of blood, would be able to bake the same wonderful desserts. Then the little girl promised that when she grew up, she would open a cafe and fill the windows with the best cakes. Now the heroine understands that she will never return to this palace, and it never became her home. Even the chandelier seems to her just an expensive thing for sale. She notices a crying maid and asks why. Melly apologizes, but Erin says she's no longer her ladyship and asks to be called by her first name. Erin thanks Melly for her dedicated service and admits that she will miss her caring and warm habits. The maid timidly asks if she can come with her and serve in her house again. Hearing this, the main character realizes that she doesn't know what to do. A few years ago, coffee from the southern ports became a fashionable drink among the nobility, and was usually served by servants rather than maids. Melly was in charge of Erin's drinks and was her only friend in the estate. Erin thinks she'd like to take her with her, but she only has enough money to open a coffee shop. The head maid, Mrs. Brennan, enters the room without knocking and rudely asks if the lady is ready, as the room needs to be cleaned. The Duchess notes that Brennan has always treated her with hostility and lacked respect. The head maid declares that the Duchess disgraced herself at the banquet, and her low birth is still visible, no matter what title she bears. She sarcastically reasons why His Highness chose such a wife and entrusted her with the outbuilding. Erin knows that this maid has always been on the Count's side, and it was she who introduced him to his new mistress for the benefit of the family. At this moment, Erin realizes that she has put up with everything for too long for the sake of her parents, and it is time to put an end to it. She recalls how her father was hurt by her humiliated position and how he went to war hoping to regain her respect. The father brought victory to the empire, but died, and the mother soon died of illness, asking for forgiveness for her daughter's suffering. Standing at their graves, Erin decides not to continue this miserable existence any longer. She calmly asks the maid if she is rushing her and says that she is already leaving. Erin checks with Ms. Brennan to see if she noticed the lady moving out. The head maid shouts at Melly, demanding an explanation, and she replies that she came to say goodbye to Lady Erin. Hearing this, Brennan hits the girl in the face, insults her, and throws her out. Erin coldly remarks that the maid is getting away with too much and orders her to pack her things and leave the estate immediately. The maid doesn't understand what she's talking about, and Erin sarcastically asks her about her hearing and smiles. Erin declares that Miss Brennan is fired, but she replies that a lady has no right to do so. Erin says that even though she is not a countess, the ring with the Empress's seal still belongs to her. The Emperor confirms important decrees with his seal, and the affairs of the palace are conducted with the seal of the Empress. Erin reminds that the Empress has long since passed away, Raymond's mother died in childbirth, and now she is the most influential woman in the palace. The head maid objects that the seal is given only with the title. Erin calmly explains that the seal was entrusted to her by the Emperor himself, and dismissal will be her last order. Brennan defiantly replies that the new countess will return her position. Erin says she's fired before then, and asks if she's willing to wait 4 months. While His Majesty is at war, Raymond is in a hurry to formalize the divorce, but Erin notes that the process will drag on, and there will be consequences. She adds that permission for a new marriage and wedding will take time, and Brennan will remain unemployed for a long time. The maid tries to object, but Erin says that she is now the Marquise de Braga and demands respect. The head maid threatens Melly with violence when she is hired again. Erin intervenes and declares that Melly will leave with her. She offers Melly a job at the future pastry shop, honestly warning her about the hard work and promising double pay. Erin says that she wants Melly to be her assistant, and she happily agrees, thanking her owner. Erin knows in her heart that she can't pay yet, but she decides to save the girl, otherwise she won't survive next to this woman. The young mistress hugs the maid and thinks that she managed to save at least one life. Erin asks Melly to pack her things and promises to wait. She reflects that she thought she would lose everything without the title, but after signing the final document, she feels true freedom for the first time. Raymond remembers her words about the pastry shop and decides that the divorce has driven her mad, remembering their first meeting. He thinks that if the Emperor had not forced this marriage on her, he would not have treated her this way, because for 9 years there had not been a single quarrel. The butler enters the room and announces an urgent letter from the Emperor, assuming that the divorce is already known. Raymond says there's no point in reading it, because it's probably an order to bring Erin home. The servant wonders what will happen when the Emperor returns, and adds that this cake is from Lady Serena. Raymond refuses, and orders to get rid of him. Melly happily asks where they're going, and Erin replies that they need to find a place to stay first. She's interested in a house for 2 ladies with space for a restaurant, preferably cheaper, from Monsieur. The man offers a house on Beltro Street, in a quiet area with shops, considering it ideal for a woman's business. Melly notes that it is mainly officials and wealthy merchants who live there. The man explains that the owner is in a hurry to leave and is selling the cafe cheaply along with the furniture, and Erin realizes that the establishment is run down. Melly notices a backyard with a garden and reports it. Seeing the garden, Erin feels a sense of peace and is glad that the house has a kitchen where she can cook. The man shows her the bedroom on the 2nd floor and asks if she likes it. Erin decides that the area is right for them, gives the money, and buys the cafe. It's very dirty inside, and Melly offers to clean it, but Erin says she's not a duchess anymore and takes on the job with her. Melly reminds them it's lunchtime and asks what to cook. Erin mixes lemon juice with butter to make lemon curd, pours it into the base, and tops it with whipped meringue. She puts the pie in the oven and bakes it until golden brown. A few minutes later, a lemon meringue pie emerges from the oven. Melly comes back from cleaning and is surprised by the wonderful aroma. Erin praises her and suggests she try it. Melly admires the taste and says that the stories about their family's talent were true, and Erin smiles and hopes that she likes lemons. The maid enthusiastically describes the delicate cream, refreshing acidity, and crisp meringue, calling the pie fantastic. Melly asks where Erin learned to cook like that, and she tells her about her mother and the lemons from the Erdan Mountains. The maid wonders why lemon is considered a symbol of suffering, since it is so common. Erin remembers her mother telling her how the acidity of lemons becomes soft and sweet over time, if you just give it a chance. Erin says lemon pie symbolizes overcoming adversity for her, and it's the perfect dessert for her right now. She admits that she baked it secretly in the Imperial Palace and shared it only once, with one person, to whom she never had time to say goodbye. At this time, a young man with black hair looks at the city and notices that he has not been to the capital for a long time. The head maid comes to Serena and complains that she worked in the castle for 10 years, and this woman just went and fired her. Serena advises not to be sad, and the maid replies that Lady Serena will soon become a duchess, and this is her only consolation, because the Empress's palace suits her much better. Serena von Brennan says she heard about Erin's plans to open a cafe, and the maid adds that she has already found a location and ordered ingredients, offering to intervene. The fair-haired lady suggests leaving everything as is, but the head maid believes that the exiled wife's success will be a stain on the Duke's reputation. Serena admits she doesn't know much about restaurants and wonders if a cafe can function without coffee. She thinks about how there are always extra ears in the Imperial Palace and wonders if she will become the new Duchess and whether His Majesty will allow it. Serena remembers that her father was a minor aristocrat who bought his title with money, and even now, the contempt for her has not gone away. She understands that all her efforts were for the attention of a man who could make her an empress, but she realizes that these are empty dreams. Suddenly, Serena notices His Majesty, greets him, and thinks that if she gets him, her power will become limitless. Serena tells the Duke about the ball at the Flynn estate and asks if he will go with her. At that moment, a black-haired young man approaches them and addresses the Duke, calling him brother. Calix says that he hasn't seen him for a long time, and Raymond is surprised because he thought that his brother was with His Majesty. Calix replies that it's boring there, grandfather is always in a bad mood, and it's hard to be around him. Serena realizes that Archduke Ruthen has returned, and that he is Raymond's younger brother and the next heir to the throne. The Reuton family was a distant relative of the emperor's and enjoyed the rights of the imperial family, and Calix's father died saving the prince. In memory of this, the prince adopted his only son, Calix. Serena greets Calix and remarks that she hasn't seen him in the capital for a long time, but he ignores her and asks Raymond about his husband. The Duke does not understand the question, and Calix explains that they lived together for 9 years, and now she is nowhere to be seen, and grandfather also asked about her. Raymond sharply replies that if he is so interested, he should look for her himself, and leaves. Serena asks Calix to wait for her, but he replies that he is busy today. Calix becomes curious about where his brother put his wife. Meanwhile, Erin is in the kitchen baking macarons, imagining pink and strawberry, beige and vanilla, lilac and blueberry, and mint green and pistachio. She remembers that she hasn't made them for a long time, but the result was excellent, and tells Melly about it. Melly says that Erin is just in time, the coffee is ready, and suggests they have a drink together. The Marquise thanks her for her efforts and offers her some macaroons and fresh coffee. Erin compliments Melly on her coffee, who smiles and admires her macarons, calling them perfect with the strong drink. Erin smiles and says they're meant to be together, and Melly suggests putting replicas in the display case. She explains that real desserts spoil quickly, and sugar replicas will show customers the selection. Erin agrees and says that just as the studio displays its best work, so too will they show off their cakes. Melly asks about the coffee bean delivery and says she used the last of hers, and Erin replies that the delivery will be today. The girls hear a knock and think it is the suppliers, but the men announce the price of 300 gold pieces per box. Erin understands that coffee is an expensive pleasure, and Viscount Arndt has a monopoly, and nothing can be done about it. She decides that coffee is rarely delivered, and it is better to take it now, assuring that it will last a long time. Opening the drawer, Erin sees crooked, beetle-eaten beans, and realizes the coffee is spoiled. She asks the supplier about the quality, but he replies that they either take it or wait 2 months for the next delivery. Melly asks, confused, what to do and whether they will demand a refund. The supplier states that there are no returns, which surprises the maid. Aaron thinks the grain may have been spoiled in the warehouse, but feels that bad product is being sent to certain customers on purpose. Melly says they can't even open without coffee. The Marquise takes her by the hands, calms her down, and says that she will sort everything out. Aaron asks the suppliers to wait, promises to pay extra, and asks that the boxes be delivered to another address. The Glacier Estate was a place of entertainment for the aristocracy and card games. Aaron decides to go in there, and a butler meets her at the door, promising to take her there. Inside, she marvels at the luxury of the house, realizing that the stakes here are far higher than rumors. The Marquise asks about Viscount Arnte and is directed to the second hall on the second floor. The Arndt family traded with the South and held a monopoly on coffee, fruits, and exotic goods, where coffee brought in the main income. Thanks to his wealth, Jacques Arndt spent his time in endless revelry and amusements. Aaron knocks on the door and hears screams, then asks if he recognizes her. Seeing Aaron, Arndt is surprised by her visit, and she calmly explains that she came on business. He sarcastically calls her a marquise and suggests that she go downstairs if she wants to play cards. Aaron says she came because of his company's product, and Arndt thinks that she won't be able to do anything after being expelled. The Marquise declares that the goods are beyond all praise, and adds that she sent them as a gift to the imperial palace. Hearing this, Arndt drops his glass and shouts that she ordered coffee for the cafe. Aaron agrees, but says she changed her mind and chose tea, which greatly alarms him. She asks him directly whether he sent a damaged product and shows him the payment receipt. Arndt thinks she is trying to outsmart him and declares that her tricks are useless. He says that if His Majesty is dissatisfied, he will blame it on his subordinates and apologize, and then offers to pay compensation. The Viscount warns that this will be her last purchase and that she will become an unreliable client. Aaron thinks about how easily he threatens people using his power. She agrees that the Emperor will forgive him and asks if he has thought about the other merchants' reactions. Aaron says word will spread quickly about selling trash instead of coffee, and asks if he's confident in his monopoly. Looking at the confused Viscount, she notices that he is not used to hearing complaints about quality. Aaron knows she would have kept quiet before, but that time has passed. She offers to keep everything a secret in exchange for a normal product, and promises to send a letter about returning the spoiled coffee. Arndt agrees to a replacement for 300 gold, but Aaron demands 600, citing damages and penalties. He is indignant, but she says that she will do things her way and says goodbye. The Viscount stops her and agrees to the terms. Aaron notes his foresight and leaves feeling victorious. As she walks down the hallway, she thinks about how she will tell Melly everything. Suddenly, someone grabs her hand and rudely asks how much it costs. Aaron orders him to let her go, but the man only scoffs. She doesn't believe that such people are allowed here, and he tells her not to spoil his mood. Aaron kicks him as hard as she can, and the man swears in pain. She realizes that he won't leave her alone and decides to reveal her identity. At this moment, His Highness appears, and Aaron is surprised to meet him in this place. She greets him, and the man apologizes for being rude, and Raymond offers him to apologize. The stranger apologizes, and Aaron understands that he is afraid to behave insolently in front of the future emperor. His Highness orders him to leave, and he thanks him and leaves. Raymond says he didn't expect to see her here, and Aaron replies that she didn't know about his hobbies and wonders if Serena knows. He offers her alimony and tells her that she shouldn't go to such places. Aaron is surprised and replies that she didn't come to play, but on business at the cafe, advising not to jump to conclusions. Raymond asks if she really wants to do this, and Aaron says yes. He says that she is upset because of Serena and is trying to get back at him, which leaves her confused. Raymond suggests admitting that the cafe was started out of jealousy. Aaron thinks he never realized that the world doesn't revolve around him. She remembers meeting Serena and thinks about her debts and precarious situation. Then she remembers how the maids reported to the Crown Prince that she had oppressed Serena again. Aaron realizes that there was no place for her in his heart from the very beginning. She says she wants to open a cafe and Serena has nothing to do with it. Aaron adds that this has been her long-time dream, and that's the end of the conversation. She talks about a small cafe and the simple happiness of living where you want, and says goodbye to those you love and leaves. Raymond stops her and offers her money so that she doesn't have to. He says he is ready to help further. Aaron thinks she would have melted under such care 9 years ago. But now she understands that there is no place for him in her heart, refuses the money, and asks him not to interfere in her business anymore. Left alone, Raymond thinks that he does not understand at all what happened to her. The butler asks if he is lost. Raymond replies that everything is fine and leaves. Raymond asks the man if the gold has been delivered. The knight replies that the weapons will be delivered within a month. His Highness says that he is counting on him and asks that everything goes without delay. Erin thinks it's been a tough day and her energy is running low. Entering her cafe, she's surprised to find it spotlessly clean. The Marquise tells the maid that she has already returned and was able to arrange for coffee. Melly happily greets the lady and announces that they have a visitor. Erin sees Ines and is genuinely surprised. She says he was supposed to be in the south by His Majesty's orders and doesn't understand how he ended up here. The guy explains that he returned immediately after the end of the war was declared and learned about what happened to her. Hearing this, Erin is even more surprised and asks what he means. Ines says he should have told her the truth back then. He adds that if he had stayed, she wouldn't have had to go through all this. Ines von Lefnen is the leader of the Order of the Holy Sword and her close childhood friend. Erin reminisces about their childhood and their games. She remembers how Ines baked her a cake for his birthday and how she sincerely thanked him for the delicious slice. Then the boy promised to make her a cake for every birthday. But Erin knew that this promise was not destined to come true, because she soon learned that he was leaving to study at a military academy. Ines said that he wanted to become a knight and assured her that he would definitely write to her. The girl said that she understood him and that she would miss him very much. Erin recalls that when he turned 16, he realized his dream. She moved to the Marquis' estate, and their meetings ceased. 13 years later, Erin learned that the Order of the Holy Sword had a new leader. Young ladies lined up just to talk to him because he was single and attracted everyone's attention. At the time, Erin thought she had never gotten used to the estate, and suddenly Ines came up to her, greeted her, and said that he hadn't seen her for a long time. Erin knew he'd returned a war hero. She told him he'd already been appointed head of the order and praised him wholeheartedly. Ines replied that the higher-ups simply deemed him suitable for the position. But Erin understood that at court, without connections and pedigree, such an appointment was impossible. The son of a simple knight clearly achieved this at the cost of enormous effort. Ines notices that they only talk about him all the time and asks how she's doing. He adds that he's already heard everything. Erin thinks he's hinting at an affair between the Duke and Serena. She says she didn't expect the rumors to spread so quickly and assures him there's nothing to worry about. Ines apologizes for not being able to come to her mother's funeral. He says he wants to visit her grave now and asks if it was hard for her. Erin thinks how unusual it is to hear, not gossip about the Duchess's life, but a sincere question of concern for her. She replies that she has dealt with everything and thanks him for his attention. Erin says she thought there would never be anyone in her life who cared about her again. His lilac eyes, full of kindness, take her back to her childhood and warm her heart. From then on, they saw each other occasionally. Erin could talk to him about how she didn't trust anyone, and their meetings didn't arouse suspicion. The Marquise understands that she still needs to be careful, as rumors could harm them both. She feels that because of her, Ines might not get a girlfriend. Erin thinks it's time for her to go back, as the ball is already coming to an end. Suddenly, she sees Ines wounded, lying on the ground unconscious. There's blood on his shirt, and Erin smells a strange, eerie odor. She realizes it's Lucifer's venom. This poison is the product of monsters, and if the antidote is not given in time, the body will quickly be consumed by gangrene. Sitting next to him, Erin recalled that sometimes he looked ill, but she chalked it up to fatigue. Now the reason became clear. Suddenly she hears the voices of women approaching and realizes that she must hide Ines. Erin knows the poison isn't contagious, but she understands the danger. If the infected person dies, a new monster could emerge from their body. She understands that if the poison is discovered, Ines will be immediately put into eternal sleep without even trying to treat him. The guy comes to his senses and, looking at his body, realizes that she found out everything. Erin reassures him, asks him not to be afraid, and says she'll take this secret with her. She asks him to be quiet because people are coming. Ines says that she cannot stay near him and suggests that she return to the palace. Erin objects and asks how she can leave him alone. At that moment, the ladies appear, see Erin and Ines, and are astonished. Not a minute passes before the entire high society is talking about it. The Emperor addresses Erin, mentioning the midnight garden, the bushes, and the night. He says everyone knows her husband doesn't love her, but Ines is handsome, popular, and, what's more, her childhood friend. Erin realizes that this is a real feast for gossip lovers. The Emperor asks her to explain herself. Erin thinks she can't tell the truth about his condition, otherwise it will raise unnecessary questions. She claims that she did nothing to tarnish her honor. The Emperor announces that he is sending the head of the Order of the Holy Sword to the south and suggests ending the conversation here. Soon, Ains is sent to serve in the south, and then Crown Prince Raymond announces a divorce. Thinking back, Erin feels doubt. There are too many coincidences, as if everything was planned in advance. Ains says he doesn't remember how he ended up there. He felt fine until he drank that evening. Erin thinks that someone deliberately got him drunk and carefully staged the situation to damage her reputation. She understands that the culprit might not have known about the poison. The wound could have been aggravated by the aphrodisiac laced with the alcohol. Ains says he's returned to tell the truth. He wants to go to the Duke and explain everything, knowing she was only trying to help. Erin asks him not to do it. She says it was just a convenient excuse, since the Duke wanted a divorce anyway, and she herself asked him to keep quiet. Erin explains that if the truth comes out, she'll never be able to return to the castle, and he'll be the only one who suffers. She asks if that's what he wants. Ains says he only wants to protect her honor. Erin thinks he's stubborn and calls him that. Erin assures him that she'll be fine. She points around and says that this is her new home in Café, and she's happy here. The Marquise says that after the divorce, she felt free, as if a huge burden had been lifted from her shoulders. She asks Ains how he feels and what's wrong with his wound. He replies that he feels better because they sent an effective antidote from the north. Erin says she's glad to hear it and admits she wouldn't have survived his death. She believes that if it is so important for him to tell the truth, then he should do it after he recovers, when he is not put into eternal sleep because of the poison. Erin asks him to promise, and he agrees. She says they haven't seen each other in a while and wants to cook something special for him. Then they walk into the garden together. Erin asks if he remembers how they made cakes for their 9th anniversary. Ains replies that it is impossible to forget something like this. Erin remembers him saying he had never had a birthday cake made for him before. Ains says he'll always remember the taste of that cake. Erin admits it wasn't very pretty, but she was proud because he was happy. Ains laughs and says his cake was even worse. The sponge cake never rose. Erin smiles and says it was delicious though. Ains admits that he always dreamed of being with her and still does not give up this hope. He recalls wanting to prove himself worthy of her. That's why he volunteered for the dangerous Northern Front, dreaming of returning a hero and proposing to her. He thinks that one day he'll muster the courage to tell her everything. But he remembers the newspaper, which reported on the wedding of nobles while they were battling monsters in the bitter cold. Looking at the photographs, he couldn't see any faces, but from the article, he knew it was Erin. He realized that she had become a duchess, had taken over the running of the palace, and that rumors were swirling about her husband's affair with a young aristocrat. Ains reflects on how hard it was for him to break into high society. He achieved it, but at the cost of sacrifice, including Lucifer poisoning. He realizes that his biggest regret was when Erin's reputation suffered because of his wound. At this point, Erin says there are enough tomatoes and suggests they go. Ains takes the basket. Erin notices that he's still as polite as ever and thanks him. He replies that there's nothing to be thanked for. Erin says that many men wouldn't lift a finger for a lady, but he has a reason to be proud. Ains thinks that he once resigned himself to her marriage and consoled himself with the thought that she would be happy. He looks at Erin and realizes that he wants to be with her forever, although he is afraid of appearing impudent after everything that happened. He decides that sooner or later, he will tell the whole world the truth and restore her good name, because the main thing for him is to be there. Returning to the house, the maid takes the vegetables and begins to cut them, asking what the mistress will cook. Erin says she wants to make tomato soup. Melly is surprised and says it's a complicated dish, but Erin assures her it's simpler and offers to watch. She explains that you first fry the meat in oil until done, then add the vegetables and fry them together. Then the fried mixture is put into the broth, spices and tomatoes are added, and it is cooked. After a few minutes, Melly says the soup is delicious, full of flavor and aroma. Erin tells Ains it's not a festive dish, but she hopes he enjoys it. He thinks he's having a hard time holding back. Just a few minutes later, the bowl is empty. Ains raves that the soup is fantastic and admits that only she can cook it so well. Melly agrees, saying Lady Erin is the best cook, perfectly pairing fresh tomatoes with meat and potatoes. The maid asks if he wants more, Ainz replies that he doesn't mind, saying that her desserts are worthy of a king's table. He is confident that her cafe will become the most popular place and asks what she is going to name it. Erin says she came up with a name a long time ago, remembers her mother, and decides to call the cafe Lemon. At the same time, noble ladies are gathering at Count Flynn's estate. One of them says that Serena is dazzling today and is considered the most beautiful woman in the court for good reason. Serena replies that she's being flattered. The green-haired lady adds that she heard the Duke divorce the Duchess because of infidelity. Serena confirms this, and at the same moment notices the appearance of His Highness Calix. The young gentleman immediately attracts the attention of all the ladies, because each one dreams of becoming his wife. Sitting at the table, one of the girls notices him looking in their direction. At this point, Serena thinks he's holding a grudge against her. Calix has always been like this. He's His Highness's only brother, and Serena tried to build a relationship with him, but he always ignored her. The Duke's mistress thought she didn't like the way he was behaving with her in public. Then she turned to the ladies, said she'd be stepping away for a moment, and explained she needed to speak with her stepfather. When the lady left, the girls immediately began gossiping. They discussed how Duke Raymond's disgraced wife had opened a cafe in the eastern part of the capital. Another lady clarified that it wasn't even a cafe, but a pastry shop with coffee and sweets. The green-haired Marchioness declared that if she were opening a cafe, she would choose the center of the capital. She couldn't understand why the Duchess chose the outskirts. The red-haired girl assumed that she simply wanted to avoid unnecessary attention and live peacefully with the leader of the knighthood. The blue-haired lady said the former Duchess had acted very cleverly. She had settled further away from the center and was enjoying happy days with her lover. At that moment, Calix approached them and asked which lover they were talking about. Hearing his voice, the young ladies were visibly surprised. His Highness apologized for startling them. He explained that he simply couldn't ignore such a conversation and, again, apologized for eavesdropping. The red-haired girl said he had nothing to apologize for. The gentleman noted her kindness and asked if what they had said about his daughter-in-law was true. Calix noted that he seemed to have missed a lot, since he had not been to the capital for a long time. At that moment, the girls remembered that the Emperor had forbidden spreading gossip about Erin. The young gentleman asked why they had suddenly gone silent. He said he was very curious and offered to tell them everything. He also reminded them that he knew about the Emperor's prohibition, but emphasized that this wasn't the imperial palace. Hearing this, the red-haired girl thought she could tell him a lot, since the Emperor would forgive him everything. But she still doubted she could trust him. The girl reported that the former Duchess had embraced Ainz. She and the leader of the knights were allegedly caught in the garden at night, hiding in the bushes. She hinted that he himself knew what a man and a woman could be doing there. The red-haired lady added that after the divorce, the Duchess bought a cafe further from the city center. Calix asked if she thought she did this to meet her lover, and if she had seen them that night. My lady objected, saying she hadn't seen it herself. Lady Melvin had told her. Calix remarked that meant she had. The girl objected again, saying she'd heard it from Count Lanavel. The gentleman immediately asked if he'd seen it himself. Milady replied that the Count had been told about it by a servant. His Highness suggested that the servant might have been a witness, and asked her name and where she could be found. Hearing this, the lady was confused and didn't know what to say. Calix concluded that the lady had heard the tale from an unknown source and was retelling it to everyone with such certainty, as if she'd witnessed it herself. At that moment, the girl thought she'd been caught. She realized that, although he was acting friendly, she couldn't forget that before her stood the Empire's only Archduke and one who enjoyed the Emperor's full support. Milady turned to His Highness and begged for forgiveness. Calix coldly said that if Madame wanted to live in peace, she'd better not blab about things she didn't know. Stepping out onto the balcony, the young gentleman thought he hated the capital for all its filth. He was also stung by the new lover the Duchess had suddenly acquired. His Highness reflected on the palace, a place where servants, officials, guards, and nobles constantly scurry about. If the Duchess had truly desired a secret meeting, she would have invited the man to her chambers. The idea of a secret rendezvous in the garden seemed absurd to him. He was sure she would never do such a thing. Suddenly, a knight approached His Highness and announced that he had news from the south. He said that His Majesty was returning to the capital. Meanwhile, a woman outside thought it was too hot today, even though summer was still a long way off. Seeing a cafe, she decided she could take a break there. The woman was surprised, unsure when the new establishment had opened there. Reading the sign, she learned it was a cafe and pastry shop, and thought that something like that used to be found only in the city center. The maid greeted the visitor warmly and asked how she could help. The stranger sat down at the table and noted how cozy it was inside. The waitress asked about her order. The lady decided not to risk desserts in an unfamiliar place and ordered a cup of iced tea. Melly brought iced tea and scones as a gift to celebrate the opening. The woman realized the cafe was truly new and decided she was lucky. After tasting the pastries, Madame thought she'd never eaten scones like these. They were tender and literally melted in her mouth. The woman enthusiastically praised the waitress's scones. The waitress explained that she made them with cream for extra softness and suggested trying the strawberry jam version. The stranger remarked on the bright and sweet flavor of the jam paired with the delicate, creamy scones. She also said she had never tasted such a refreshing iced tea with the exquisite aroma of black tea. The customer asked for another millefeuille. A few minutes later, the protagonist fulfilled the order. The woman glanced at the dessert and said it looked very appetizing. She thought it was rare to find a millefeuille like this. After trying a piece, she admitted it was incredibly delicious. By this time, Erin thought the gift scones were almost ready. She wanted to delight her first guests on opening day, and after dinner she planned to serve cookies as well. Suddenly, the girl noticed that it had become too quiet. She called out to Melly and asked what had happened. A butler from the imperial palace approached Lady Erin and announced that he had come to deliver a command. The emperor had summoned her. Erin recalled a conversation 9 years ago. Back then, the emperor had said he'd heard rumors of Raymond's neglect and hostility after the wedding. He'd admitted he'd expected difficulties, but he didn't think it would be this bad. The emperor considered it his fault and asked Lady Erin to accept his sincere apologies. Hearing this, the girl assured him that she was fine and asked him not to bow his head. She thanked him for everything he had done for her parents. His Majesty said that as long as he lived, the lady could always count on his support and help. The butler announced that the emperor had ordered Lady Erin to be escorted to the palace. Surprised, the girl asked if the king would allow her to return. The servant replied that His Majesty wished to ask her for help. Erin, thinking he hadn't changed at all, thanked him for the message and said she didn't wish to return, asking him to convey her deep gratitude to the emperor. Erin asked the butler to wait and collected some cookies for the emperor. She said it was nothing and earnestly asked him to give them to His Majesty. Seeing the cookies, the emperor thought he should have expected it. He realized the lady was offended and suggested calling Raymond. The emperor asked the duke if he knew why he had been summoned. Raymond replied that they had discussed everything like civilized people and that divorce was a reasonable, mutual decision. He added that when people aren't right for each other, it's best for them to separate. His Majesty declared that he and Erin were the future emperor and empress, not an ordinary couple. Raymond said he understood this and therefore could not allow rumors of her infidelity to tarnish the family's honor. Hearing this, the emperor reflected on how much effort he'd invested in Raymond and Calix's education, but it hadn't improved their intelligence. The boy still had his own way. The emperor recalled the day he told Raymond of his impending wedding. The duke had declared that he could not and would not marry a woman he did not love. His Majesty asked if he intended to continue to neglect Erin and bring another woman to the palace. He thought this girl should be his wife. The emperor said that all this was just rumors and not a reason for divorce after 9 years of marriage. He noted that Erin was a decent girl who handled palace affairs well and was too kind to them. Raymond replied that His Majesty had always been generous to her. He added that even if she was the future empress, that didn't mean he was obligated to put up with her. The duke declared that the divorce proceedings were now unstoppable. He sarcastically asked if the emperor himself would like to marry her, adding that he had no objections. After these words, the emperor threw a cup of tea in his face. The butler handed him a napkin, and the emperor demanded that Erin be returned home. Raymond objected and said that it was impossible, since she had already signed the divorce papers. The emperor declared that a divorce was impossible without his permission. He dismissed the documents as mere papers and reminded them that Raymond was his grandson and should have asked for permission. His Majesty ordered Erin to be brought to him and declared that he did not wish to hear about divorce. When the duke left, Serena met him and asked how things were. An angry Raymond ordered them to leave immediately. The lady tried to understand what had happened, but he only shouted again for them to leave. Serena thought things hadn't gone according to plan. She'd expected to become a duchess herself after getting rid of Erin. The mistress recalled how that night she slipped the leader of the knighthood a drug to create a compromising situation. She realized the potion hadn't worked properly, and the incriminating evidence was weak. Nevertheless, she hoped His Highness would abandon the girl and be with her. Serena reflected on how the emperor refused to acknowledge her and stripped Raymond of his status as crown prince. She couldn't understand how Aaron was any better than her. In the end, Serena thought that if she just eliminated Aaron, the Duke would finally be hers. Rumors began circulating in the capital that a certain woman had moved out of the imperial palace and into the eastern part of the city, opening a cafe there. Another man added that he had heard people coming from the palace to fetch her, asking her to return. The chef said he'd heard she'd declined and sent the emperor an exquisite dessert instead. Everyone was curious about her. A stranger at the cafe claimed to know her personally. She was certain she was connected to the palace, as the royal monogram hung on the facade. Hearing this, Milady became curious whether the nobles from the palace ordered desserts from her. The woman said she discovered the cafe by chance and was amazed by the exquisite drinks and sweets. She wondered if an ordinary owner could afford such high-quality ingredients. Suddenly, a girl with long black hair approached them, apologized for interrupting, and asked if it was true or just a rumor. The girl with short hair replied that everything happens for a reason. She noted that there wouldn't have been a ban on talking if the rumors had no basis. The stranger added that if this weren't true, the cafe would be openly supported. Instead, they pretend it doesn't exist, which is why she's certain the dessert was indeed sent to the palace. Meanwhile, the main character was making an apple pie. Sitting down for a moment, she thought there were too many customers today and she was completely exhausted. She also thought about visiting Ains and thanking him for the gift. Melly approached the lady and said she had received a package. She asked, surprised, if Aaron had ordered such an expensive set. Aaron replied that she was seeing him for the first time. The messenger informed her that the package contained a note. After reading it, the protagonist realized it was a gift from Ains. She realized how expensive it was, but decided the help was most welcome. A few minutes later, the pie was ready. Aaron pulled it out of the oven and realized it was a success. Golden crust, apple-flavored aroma, and a very appetizing appearance. She thought that all that was left to do was cut the pie, and it could be served. Suddenly, the girl heard shouts that someone had been mistaken for a beggar. Opening the door, she saw Melly lying on the floor. The maid pointed to the man and said that this was the same man. The guy loudly demanded to call the owner of the cafe and stated that the waitress had disgusting manners. Aaron calmly stated that she was the owner. She asked how he dared behave like that and emphasized that it was unacceptable. The man claimed he paid the waitress 10 gold coins, but she claimed she only received 10 silver coins and is now accusing him of fraud. Melly explained that he'd paid her in silver and then started demanding change, claiming he'd given her gold. She tried to call for help, but the cafe was full of women, frightened by his behavior. One of the customers told Aaron that she herself saw the man give exactly 10 silver coins. Hearing this, Aaron stated that she had witnesses and asked what he would say in his defense. The man shouted that they were all crazy and threw a bag of coins at the girl. He said it was his wallet and offered to count the money. Opening the pouch and seeing the silver, Aaron threw it back at the man. She suggested that he count the money himself and added that he had not been taught good manners or even simple mathematics. The enraged boy raised his hand as if he was going to hit Aaron, but suddenly cried out in pain and collapsed to the floor. The dark-haired man said that this guy had almost made the biggest mistake of his life. He turned to the lady and remarked that he had arrived on time. Calix greeted the marquise, said he hadn't seen her for a while, and asked what had happened. Seeing the man on the floor, he apologized to the lady for what had happened and stepped on his chest. The young gentleman told Madame that, if she allowed it, he was ready to put this son of a dog into eternal sleep. Hearing this, the main character objected. She said that it wasn't worth doing, because no one would want to go to a cafe where someone had been put into eternal sleep. His Highness called the man a dog and told him to get lost before he changed his mind. Aaron addressed the visitors and apologized for the scene that had occurred. Then she asked His Highness why he had come at all. The young gentleman replied that his former relative had opened a cafe, and he was curious. He smiled and remarked that she seemed to have a busy life there. Upon hearing this, the main character said he was exaggerating and explained that such incidents don't happen every day. In any case, she sincerely thanked him for his help. Aaron suggested that the gentleman have a cup of tea alone and remarked that she was afraid that he would not be able to avoid unnecessary attention. At that moment, the maid informed Milady that her client was waiting outside. The master realized she had much to do and said he would come back another time. The main character asked in surprise if he was already leaving. His Highness replied that he had done what he came for and simply wanted to see her new cafe. The girl thought he had truly only come out of curiosity. Erin turned to the gentleman, apologized for the long wait, and asked how she could help. The customer explained that he had come on behalf of Lady Catherine von Levant. He informed her that my lady wished to order a sacerdote for the tea party the day after tomorrow. Hearing this, the main character remembered that Lady Catherine was the Prime Minister's granddaughter. She wondered why the Duchess was ordering from such a modest pastry shop. The servant added that my lady requested Erin to attend the tea party in person and present the cake. The girl immediately realized it wasn't about dessert at all, and that the Duchess wanted to put on a show. However, she decided there was no reason to refuse. Erin told me to tell her that the order had been accepted and immediately returned to work, starting to make cupcakes. Suddenly, a gentleman approached the Marquise with a spoon in his hand. Seeing him, the girl asked in surprise what His Highness was doing there. Calix noted with a grin that the Marquise was starting her workday too early. He explained that he had come to watch his former relative at work and added that he wanted to try the kelp dessert as well. Hearing this, Erin thought they were no longer related after the divorce. But at the same time, she understood that he had always treated her warmly. Crown Prince Calix was orphaned at an early age and adopted by a prince of the imperial family, a friend of his father. However, 2 years later, the prince fell gravely ill. The emperor took pity on the boy and raised him as his own grandson, showering him with generous care. As a result, Calix grew up free, kind, and independent. Erin remembered how shy she'd been at first in the palace. It was Calix who'd shown concern for her, inviting her to play and making sure she didn't go hungry. The main character told His Highness that she was very busy today. He replied that he would simply watch her work. The Marquise noticed that he was probably bored and offered to take some cookies prepared for the guests. Erin recalled the strict court etiquette and endless duties of a duchess, which made her dizzy. At the palace, she was surrounded by people who discussed her personal life behind her back. She thought about how Calix had always been a bright and kind person to her. When he grew up, he left for his estate, and they never saw each other again. She couldn't have imagined meeting him under such circumstances. Erin told His Highness that her job was uninteresting and that he would quickly become bored. She suggested he take a walk and see the city. The young gentleman asked if she was joking. He explained that the capital had become utterly boring to him, with its balls and receptions, and that he was most at home on his own estate. The girl agreed and said she understood. He invited her to visit and assured her that no one would dare to offend her there. Erin replied that she had to work and said she'd take the desserts to the cafe for sale tomorrow. She added that if he needed anything, he could grab some cookies from the cabinet. Calix noticed that she was forgetting that he had long since outgrown his childish habits. He thought she was doing better than expected, noting that today was the first time he'd seen her stand up for herself. The young gentleman looked at the girl carefully and said that she had changed a lot. Erin asked Melly how the macaroon making was going. The maid replied that she had made some macarons and offered to show them off. Upon seeing the macarons, the main character delightedly declared that they looked so real. She added that she knew her maid was a true master. The Marchioness announced that she would be stepping out for a moment on business. She said His Highness was staying at the cafe and asked Melly to keep an eye on him. The maid asked where my lady was headed. Erin replied that she was going to Rue de Bayard to get ingredients for Lady Catherine's cake. Melly noticed it would soon be dark and offered to go in her place. The Marquise declined, saying it was important for her to choose the ingredients herself and promised to return soon. Meanwhile, Raymond was thinking that the Emperor was a stubborn old man. From that day on, he had never accepted his request for an audience and refused to see him until Erin returned. The young master couldn't understand what the Emperor saw in her. Yes, she was of noble birth, but he had never seen any particular grandeur in her. The coachman announced their arrival. Entering the cafe, the prince wondered how the former duchess could live in such a place and wondered if she made her own desserts. Raymond recalled that Erin had been baking for sale before they got married. He also recalled Serena's words about the duchess's strange birthday gift. He hadn't believed it then and dismissed it as nonsense. The mistress insisted that this was exactly how it happened. She said Erin sold pies on the street to help the family with debts and wasn't at all ashamed of it. Raymond thought he'd known about it before, but had never given it much thought. She simply hadn't interested him in his life at the time. When a maid entered the room and greeted the prince, he asked where Erin was. Melly replied that her mistress had gone to get ingredients and wouldn't be back for a while, suggesting he come back later. Raymond said he'd wait. Meanwhile, the main character left the shop and realized she'd been significantly delayed. The streets were deserted, and she felt uneasy, so she hurried back. Erin suddenly felt like she was being followed. She started to run, but the stranger caught up with her and grabbed her. The Marquise hit him in the face with her bag and tried to save herself, but her long skirt got in the way and she fell. Turning around, the girl saw a man who told her she couldn't escape. He pulled out a bladed weapon. Erin screamed, asking why he was attacking and offering to give him money if that was the case. The robber replied that he didn't need the money. He said he was following orders and lunged at her with a knife. The girl closed her eyes, and when she opened them, she saw that the robber was lying nearby, wounded and immobilized. Calix asked if she was hurt. Seeing him, Erin asked in surprise how he had gotten there. The Crown Prince extended his hand to her, offering to help. The Marchioness said she could manage on her own, but immediately realized her legs were giving out. The young gentleman calmed her down, said he wanted to help, and lifted the girl up. He then asked if she knew her attacker. Erin replied that he had attacked her outside the store. Calix assumed he was a robber, but Erin thought it was something else, since they wouldn't have put her into an eternal sleep for money. She said her attacker had mentioned an order to put her into eternal sleep. Erin couldn't understand why anyone would want that, since she was no longer a duchess, and rumors were already tarnishing her name. Calix said she was probably in a state of great distress. He offered to walk her back to the cafe and assured her she was safe with him. On the way, Erin asked how he knew where she was. Calix explained that she hadn't returned for a long time, and he'd questioned the waitress, then seen them chasing after her. The young gentleman said he was glad he'd made it in time. Erin thanked him for saving her life, and he smiled and asked if she'd let him come to the cafe every day for pastries. Erin smiled and said it was out of the question and that she would wait for him. His Highness advised her not to go to such places alone anymore, and suggested sending a maid or hiring an assistant. The protagonist thanked him for his concern and thought about how young he had been when they first met. Now, a completely different man stood next to her. Approaching the cafe, the Marquise thanked His Highness for seeing her off and said that he would not remain in debt. At that moment, Raymond opened the door and asked in surprise what Calix was doing with Erin at such a late hour. Hearing this, the main character asked Raymond what he was doing here and wondered if he was waiting for her. The prince did not answer directly, but asked a counter-question about what she was doing with Calix at such an hour. Erin, surprised, asked if she was even obligated to answer. She said she saw no reason to answer, since they were nothing to each other anymore. Raymond was indignant upon hearing this. Calix apologized and remarked that he hadn't seen such an expression on his face in a long time, after which he said he would explain everything himself. The young gentleman said that he saved his former relative from an attack and walked her home, as the streets were dangerous at night. The prince asked if she had really been attacked by a robber, and inquired whether the Marquise had been hurt. Erin replied that she was fine, thanks to Calix, and thanked him for his concern. The Marquise asked why he had come, and said that she could not stand for long, suggesting that they go inside. Raymond replied that she probably needed to rest, and said he'd come back another time. He also remarked to his brother that it was time for him to go home. Erin was surprised by such concern from Raymond and said goodbye to them. Calix told the Marquise that he would come again tomorrow. The dark-haired man noticed that Erin's attacker was no ordinary robber. He added that there was a body lying in an alley on Bayard Street and advised her to take a closer look at her. Raymond thought Calix had been stuck in the north for too long, and now he was back, teaching him the ropes. He wondered if he'd realized Calix wasn't just an adopted child, but a descendant of kings. The prince remembered how 15 years ago he had found Calix in his father's office in the emperor's palace. They were not brothers, but they got along well as children, and Calix was a very sweet boy. Raymond then told him that the emperor was calling and offered to go, promising to collect the scattered books himself. The prince thought that even if Calix inherited the title of Grand Duke and rose above him in status, he would still be of royal blood. Therefore, he had nothing to worry about. But it was then that Raymond found a letter addressed to dear Tara. He realized that Tara was Calix's mother and the Grand Duchess, and that the handwriting belonged to his father. In the letter, her father wrote about the blooming roses in the imperial garden and sent her a bouquet. He regretted not being able to be there, and wrote about her imminent marriage and the sadness of their fate. Tara replied that after the marriage he should no longer write to the Grand Duchess. She called their happy times a treasured memory and wished him happiness. Raymond realized that his father and the Grand Duchess had been lovers. The last letter was sent shortly before her wedding, and it was then that he began to wonder about his own royal blood. His father adopted Calix and raised him as his own, not only out of friendship with his father. At this time, the Crown Prince ordered the knight to find and identify a body found in one of the districts on Bayard Street. Sitting in the carriage, Raymond thought that even if Calix knew something, he was not going to give in to him in anything. Aaron was thinking about Lady Katarina's cake, which needed to be delivered this afternoon. She remembered she'd lost the ingredients and didn't know what to do. The girl realized she had no chocolate, and there was no point in starting the cake. She couldn't ask for a delay. It would damage the cafe's reputation. Aaron thought she might be able to bring one of the ready-made cakes from the counter. At the Duke of Lavant's estate, the ladies discussed whether the Duchess would show up with a cake. One of them said she probably wouldn't come, claiming she didn't know how to bake, and was only using the cafe as a cover for meetings with the knight. The brown-haired girl suggested they stop talking, reminding them that Lady Catherine was in love with Commander Ines. The butler informed the ladies that the Marchioness of Arran had arrived with a cake. The customer was delighted to see her, said they had been waiting for a long time, and offered to present the cake. Aaron thanked Lady Katarina for her trust in their lemon café and patisserie, and noted that the young lady was an expert in exquisite chocolate desserts. She said the cake was rich in chocolate, even though the classic Sacher cake is rather plain, so she decided to make a special version for this tea party. Upon seeing the cake, the ladies were amazed by its exquisite decoration. The brown-haired girl asked if the flowers were real. Aaron explained that the decoration was made of white chocolate. She said she spent a long time thinking about how to combine beauty and taste. At that moment, Aaron thought how lucky she was to have managed everything, despite the lack of ingredients. She remembered finding the bag she'd lost by the door that morning, and wondered who had returned it. She realized that only 3 people knew about what had happened: Calix, Melly, and herself. Aaron assumed Melly had long since fallen asleep, which made her even more grateful to Calix. She wondered how he'd gotten into the yard and decided the fence needed to be higher. Lady Katarina was a little taken aback, not expecting such enthusiasm from her friends. She decided to try the cake herself. The red-haired lady said she expected the chocolate to be bitter, but the cake turned out to be delicate. Her friend praised the apricot jam and admitted she could eat it every day. Katarina couldn't believe how good the cake was. Upon tasting it, she tasted the perfect balance of sweetness, the slightly bitter chocolate, and the sweet and sour jam. Katarina could hardly believe Lady Arran had made it herself. The protagonist asked if she liked the cake. The customer catches herself tempted to find fault and criticize the cake, but realizes it's too good to pretend. Ultimately, she admits that the cake isn't just okay, it's truly delicious. The Marchioness, relieved, says she's pleased with the response. One of the ladies immediately asks if Lady Arran could make a cake for her too, and she calmly agrees. The lady with lilac hair adds that she has a tea party next week, and cautiously asks if she can order too. At that moment, Serena approaches them and announces that she too would like to order a cake. She adds that she hasn't seen Lady Arran in a while. The protagonist politely greets the prince's mistress. Serena asks where she's been and remarks that she wanted to invite her to dinner, but Arran seems to have disappeared. The marquise calmly replies that there's no need to worry, since she no longer lives in the palace. Then she asks if Madame would like to place an order. Serena announces that a ball will be held at the Imperial Palace in 5 days. She says that a cake from Lady Arran would be perfect and would attract many customers. Arran takes Serena's hand and says the idea is wonderful. She promises to bake the most exquisite cake worthy of such an occasion. Serena says she's happy for Arran, as she's not overly modest. She adds that she herself was worried about rumors of her affair with the Knight Commander, and thought Arran would be shy about appearing in public. But now she sees how well she's settled in. She even admits to being envious. At this moment, the protagonist realizes that Serena hasn't changed at all. Still the same sarcasm, causticity, and feigned concern. Arran smiles and says Serena flatters her. She adds that she's a far cry from the woman who's been openly in a relationship with a married man for 9 years. Marquis says that if Serena isn't ashamed to show herself to people, she doesn't understand why she should be. She admits it was hard for her, but she was inspired by Serena's own courage. Arran says she considers Serena an example of a confident and liberated woman. Hearing this, the ladies are surprised. The main character adds that she will definitely make a cake that Serena will like. Melly later quietly tells the Marchioness that Serena's order seems suspicious to her. She asks if it's a ploy, since the prince's mistress was always plotting against Arran in the palace. The lady calmly replies that, of course, it's a trick, and she understands it perfectly well. The maid asks what to do now, since the order has already been accepted. The marquise reassures her and tells her not to be afraid, because she knows exactly what Serena is planning. Melly admits she doesn't want her mistress to suffer again. She sees Aaron leaving the palace and starting a new life, but such orders are keeping her awake at night again. Aaron explains that she can't make a half-assed cake for the ball. The better it is, the higher the cafe's prestige and her own name will rise. She says she's tired of being a silent target and is now ready to go into battle herself. Suddenly, two girls enter the cafe. The older one cautiously asks if she can buy them a cake. The waitress apologizes and says that the cafe is already closed, suggesting to come tomorrow. The younger girl excitedly says they need any cake they can get today. She assures them they'll pay and leave right away because it's so important. Aaron asks why today. The girl replies that it's her birthday. The marquise reflects on the fact that the parents usually make the cake and suggests that these children might be struggling. She says she has some cake layers left over and can make the cake right now. The girls happily agree and thank her. Aaron asks the birthday girl what kind of cakes she likes, offering to choose any flavor. The girl excitedly says that she wants a cake in the shape of a cat and asks for exactly that kind. The main character remembers how her mother made cookies in the shape of cats for her. The older sister explains to Shireen that cookies can be made in any shape, but a cake cannot. But the girl stubbornly repeats that she loves cats. The red-haired sister asks her not to be capricious and reminds her that the kind aunt agreed to help, despite the cafe being closed. Aaron thinks children care more about the cake's appearance than its taste. She says she understands the request and will definitely make a cat. The marquise asks if the girl would mind some buttercream. She happily agrees. Aaron asks Melly to make some tea and goes to make the cake. She's thinking that the easiest way is to cut out cake layers in the shape of a face and ears, but she wants something special for a children's party. And then an idea comes to her. Aaron remembers the necessary technique, although she doubts that she will succeed. A few minutes later, she shows them the cake and says that she tried to make it as cute as possible, asking if they like it. The girls are delighted and call the cake very cute. They're curious about what the cats are made of and whether they can be eaten. The marquise explains that the figures are made of marzipan and suggests trying them since she has some pieces left. The girls try it and enthusiastically declare it delicious. Aaron smiles, promises to wrap the cake, and asks them to wait a little. The older sister asks the price. Aaron replies that the cake is made from leftovers and will be free. The girl counters, saying that her parents taught her to always pay for the work. The marquise thinks that the girl is very smart and names a symbolic price, 1 silver coin. Aaron notices it's already dark outside and asks if they can get there on their own. Her sister replies that it's not far to Bayard Street, where they work at the fruit stand, and thanks her for the beautiful cake. The main character thinks what a pity it is that such young children have to work, and understands why the eldest is so mature and smart. The waitress reports that she has tidied up the place and says that my lady helped the poor children after work, calling her kind and advising her to always remain so. Aaron tells Melly she wants to discuss something about Serena. She adds that thanks to these girls, she's come up with an idea. After some time, the maid reports to Lady Serena that she has received a letter from the Marchioness of Aaron. Serena reads that Aaron will send a cake worthy of decorating the ball, and hopes that she will show it to the guests. After reading the letter, Serena tears it up. She thinks Aaron is too calm for a woman exiled from high society, and is irritated by the fact that she lives peacefully in the capital and sells her cakes. Serena remembers sending someone to put Aaron into eternal sleep, but she doesn't understand how Calyx intervened. She knows she can't reach him, and doesn't understand why he's spending time with Aaron. Serena knocks on Raymond's door and says she needs to talk. She decides that if she can't hurt Aaron directly, she'll have to do something else. The Crown Prince asks what she needs. Serena tells him she's hosting a ball at her estate tomorrow evening and asks him to accompany her. Raymond doesn't understand why he needs to go there. Serena thinks he's cooled off towards her after his conversation with the Emperor, but she's sure he won't be able to refuse. She says they haven't been out in public together for a month and asks for her understanding. Serena mentions rumors about his loss of favor and assures him that she's worried about his reputation. She reminds him that he cheated on his wife for 9 years, filed for divorce, and that if he leaves her, he will be left alone to face the Emperor's wrath. She knows he is too proud to admit his mistakes. Raymond agrees to go to the ball. Serena calls him generous and says they'd better see each other tomorrow night. Serena decides to herself that even if he is tired of her, she is not going to let him go. The next day, Calix comes to the boutique and asks Lady Erin's opinion, inquiring which dress she likes best. He frankly admits that he has little understanding of fashion. Erin thinks about how she was just home with cakes and doesn't understand how she ended up here. An hour ago, Calix admitted he hadn't expected how difficult it would be to help. Erin reassured him, telling him he wasn't obligated to participate. The Marquise recalls that she herself allowed him to come to the cafe whenever he wanted, but now she understands that he shows up too often. She tells him that their frequent meetings could damage his reputation, and wonders how he doesn't understand this. Melly informs her that she has fulfilled her request, and everything is ready to send the cake to the Brennan estate. The Marquise thanks the maid and says she manages to do everything. She adds that she will go to the ball herself tomorrow and invites Melly to rest after dinner. Calix asks in surprise if Erin is going to the ball. She replies that Lady Serena invited her. He asks if she's chosen a suitor. Erin says she's going alone, and Calix wonders why. She explains that she has no one to ask and has no intention of dancing. Then Calix offers to be her cavalier. Erin is surprised and reminds him that he always said balls were boring. Calix agrees, but says it's different now, since she's going, and hints that it's not just about the cake. The Marquise admits he's right, but warns that if he becomes her cavalier, unpleasant things will be said about him. Calix asks from whom, exactly. Erin replies that Raymond himself will know this too. Calix asks if outsiders' opinions matter. Erin says she doesn't care, because she'll live her life the way she wants. He remarks that living constantly reliant on other people's words is tiring, and asks if that's why she divorced Raymond. Calix adds that going out with him has one significant advantage. Erin asks curiously what it is. He explains that his brother's concubine hates him, and that in his presence, she would not dare approach Erin. The Marquise agrees and says that he almost convinced her by offering to be his cavalier. Calix asks her for a favor and explains that it's nothing serious. She just needs to go with him to downtown. Then Erin realizes where she is and what favor she was talking about. She asks why he didn't tell her he wanted to buy an evening gown right away. Calix admits he was afraid of rejection. Erin says that if he was counting on her fashion knowledge, he might be disappointed. She offers to explain what kind of woman the dress is for and what kind of woman she is. Erin secretly thinks that maybe he's in love, and she feels awkward asking such questions but decides that it's none of her business. Calix says this lady is nothing like a typical noblewoman. He wants to give her the most beautiful gift, knowing it's not the price that matters, but whether she likes it. Erin thinks that, based on his description, it must be a very noble lady. She's curious about who she is, but she doesn't dare ask. The Marquise notes that with such taste, it is better to choose a gift with feeling and meaning. Calix approaches the salesperson and declares that she is buying a dress in this store, ordering that all the models from the showroom be brought. Looking at the boxes, Erin thinks that this is a gift, the size of a month's budget for the palace, and asks if this will embarrass the lady of her heart. Calix clarifies which lady he's talking about. Erin explains that it's the one he's buying all this for. Calix says he didn't expect such a misunderstanding and understands that it's better to explain everything right away. Erin doesn't understand what he's talking about and asks him directly. Calix asks her why she thinks he invited her here. She replies that he wanted her to help him choose a dress for another lady and asks him to explain, because she is completely confused. Calix says it's simple. He buys these dresses for her so she can choose one and go to the ball with him. Erin, surprised, asks why he's giving her such a gift. Calix responds by asking how she understands it. Erin thinks it was interest at first, then concern, and that he was helping her out of an old attachment. Calix reminds her that she promised something, namely to accept a dress from him as a gift. Erin de Brija is known throughout the empire as a divorced duchess of ill repute. Her earliest memories date back to the age of 13. On the summer terrace, the emperor tells Calix to behave properly when meeting Erin. He reminds her that she will become his brother's wife and asks her not to run away like last time. Calix recalls that at that time, Erin was already engaged to his brother and did not arouse any interest in him. He sat at the table and thought that it was still worth running away secretly. The butler reports that the Marquis' daughter, Britzia, has arrived. Calix thought so exactly until the moment she appeared in front of him. The girl thanks her for the invitation and introduces herself as Erin de Brija. Calix suggests they skip the formalities and invite her to sit at the table. The black-haired boy cannot take his eyes off her and realizes that she is his brother's future wife. 6 months later, Erin became engaged to his brother, and a year later they married, after which she moved into the palace. Immediately after the wedding, Raymond brought his mistress to the palace. The lonely duchess was discussed, condemned, and openly ridiculed. Aaron pretended not to notice the rumors and calmly went about the business of the palace. At least, that's how it looked from the outside. Calix couldn't understand why his brother's girlfriend still lived in the palace, while his wife was constantly busy with housework and his mistress only hosted receptions and balls. One late evening, walking down the hallway, he noticed a light on in the kitchen. The servants were already resting, and he became curious about who was there. Opening the door, he saw his brother's wife and immediately thought that it would be better to pretend that he had not noticed anything. But Aaron felt the gaze and asked who was there. Realizing he had been noticed, Calix walked in and asked if she was baking a lemon pie. Aaron smiled sheepishly and admitted she'd suddenly had a pie craving in the middle of the night. She added that her mother had taught her the recipe and said sweets were a comfort when the heart was heavy. The guy realized that it was not easy for her here and admitted that he did not know about her cooking skills. The Marquis said that as a child, she dreamed of opening a small pastry shop in a quiet place and making desserts every day. Aaron offered him a piece of pie and asked him to keep what he saw a secret. Calix chuckled and asked if that bribe was enough. Aaron assured him it was, adding that after the first bite, he would definitely become her accomplice. At that moment, he was struck by her quiet voice, warm gaze, and smile meant only for him. These sensations slowly spread throughout his heart, and for the first time, he felt something truly sweet. Calix wanted Aaron to always smile. It wasn't long after that evening in the kitchen that something else happened. He suddenly announced that he wanted to buy her a dress. Aaron was surprised and asked what made him think so. Calix recalled a conversation among the ladies discussing her modest attire. They said it was dull and unadorned, as if she were in mourning. Someone noticed that Serena had a new luxurious dress with precious stones, and she looked much more like a duchess. He felt bad for Aaron and said he just wanted to give her a wedding present. The Marchioness reminded him that she'd already received a gift. He then suggested considering it a birthday present and asked him to let her treat him. Aaron agreed, asking only that the gift not be too expensive. Left alone, Calix realized he knew nothing about women's fashion. He abandoned the idea of buying up the entire studio and decided to limit himself to one outfit. He ordered the imperial designer to be summoned immediately, deciding that a bright dress would make everyone stop looking down on Aaron. Calix believed he could make her smile if she was struggling because of her brother. He didn't yet realize how wrong he was. On Aaron's birthday, the couturier announced that the dress was ready and no expense had been spared. He assured her she would be delighted. He described the delicate, high-quality fabric, crafted with a special technique, and the precious stones along the neckline. The designer added that the style is ahead of the capital's fashion and will make any lady an icon. Calix delightedly ordered the dress to be immediately packed so that he could hand it over personally. The couturier cried out that he had not yet finished his explanation. Calix was sure she would like the dress and hoped to see her smile again. He headed toward the Duchess. Aaron was looking at another dress at that moment and asked in surprise what had happened. Calix asked if she had received her gift. Aaron explained that Raymond had sent the dress through a maid and asked why he had come. It was like a cold shower had been thrown on him. He could see the outfit had been chosen without much thought, but Aaron was genuinely happy, and he realized his gift would have been unnecessary. He said that he wanted to congratulate her first, but he was late, and at that moment he realized that her heart did not belong to him. Aaron thanked him and said the gift was optional, inviting him in for tea. Calix replied that he had simply dropped by to congratulate her and said goodbye. She suggested they meet another time. He realized that this was how his first love, the one he hadn't even had time to tell her about, had ended. He should never have fallen in love with her from the very beginning. Calix realized that he wasn't the only one having these thoughts. The emperor asked what he thought of his brother's wife and ordered him not to disturb her, as she was busy with housework. Calix admitted that he thought she was having a hard time and visited her. He asked his grandfather to kick Serena out. The emperor replied that the problem was not with Serena, but with Raymond. He reminded that royal marriages are not concluded only for love, and that his brother will calm down over time. The emperor sternly said that one cannot love a married woman and ordered Calix to stop thinking about Aaron. He added that one day Calix would meet someone he would truly love. Calix hoped that the feelings would pass if he stopped seeing her, and left Ruthin. Later, a servant reported that Raymond had divorced, which greatly angered the emperor. Calix ordered the horses to be prepared and immediately set off for the capital. He thought he would see her just once, just to make sure she was okay. Aaron asked why he'd given her the dresses. Calix realized he really just wanted to be there. He realized that these feelings could weigh on her and reminded her of his promise to accept the dress as a gift. Calix explained that he hadn't had time to congratulate her earlier, and now she just needed an outfit for the ball. Aaron remembered the promise and said it was too generous. He objected that one dress was not enough and suggested that it be considered a gift for all 8 years. Aaron said she had no place to store it all. Calix offered to clear out his closet, but she declined. He believed that she no longer needed to live modestly. Aaron realized he was right. Now she could do what she loved and not pretend to be the perfect duchess. She agreed that this was not a palace and allowed herself a little luxury, promising to wear dresses with gratitude. Calix was delighted and offered to choose an outfit for tomorrow's ball. Noticing her laughter, he asked why. Aaron admitted that she remembered old feelings and that she could never refuse him. She said she liked seeing him happy. Calix was surprised and admitted he hadn't known that. Aaron replied that he was very nice then, and it was a compliment. Calix pointed out that for men, that wasn't a compliment. Aaron said she'd remember that. He pointed to a dress that particularly highlighted her hair color. On the day of the ball at the Brennan estate, Melly delivered the cake to Serena and asked her to handle it with care. She emphasized that the cake is very important. The head maid assured that everything would be fine. After lunch, Aaron closed the cafe, recorded her expenses, and began preparing for the ball. As she looked at the dress, she caught herself thinking that she couldn't forget Calix and his habit of buying everything he liked. She convinced herself that his gifts and going out together meant nothing. Melly announced that the cake had been delivered and offered to help. Aaron replied that she could handle it herself and reminded her that Melly was now an employee, not a servant. Melly objected that the dress was difficult to put on without help and asked about makeup. Aaron wanted to look modest, with simple makeup and no jewelry. Melly insisted that this couldn't be done, as Serena would surely appear in all her glory, and asked him to trust her. Aaron agreed and allowed herself to be helped. A few minutes later, Melly said she had gone a little brighter with her makeup for the sake of the look. Seeing herself in the mirror, Aaron said she didn't recognize herself and thanked her. Melly replied that she did almost nothing, because her mistress was already beautiful. Aaron looked at her watch, realized it was time to go, and sent Melly off to rest. She apologized for being late and asked Calix how long he had been waiting. Aaron asked him why he was looking like that and explained that Melly had done the makeup. Calix said that she was dazzlingly beautiful and offered her his hand. Aaron returned the compliment and noticed that he looked unusual, which made her a little nervous. At the ball, the prince initially regretted coming. He was bored. The butler announced the arrival of Duke Ruthin and Lady Bridget, and Raymond was surprised to see Aaron. The aristocrats also did not immediately recognize the marquise because of her outfit. Aaron greeted the Duke. He admitted he hadn't expected to see her and was surprised she had a partner. She noticed that he came with Serena and asked what was stopping her from coming with a gentleman. Raymond became angry, but Calix reminded him that the divorce had been finalized and he had no right to interfere. Serena claimed that she invited Aaron herself because of the cake. She said she didn't know Aaron would come with the Archduke. Aaron realized that Serena was playing her game again and decided not to tolerate it anymore. She calmly explained that the order was Serena's initiative and was important for the cafe's advertising. Aaron asked if she had received the cake and admitted she was surprised not to see it in the room. Serena replied that the cake would be served later, during the break. Aaron said she was taking a break between dances and walked away. She felt relieved that she had said everything she wanted to say and regretted that she had not done so earlier. Calix asked why she was smiling. Aaron asked if it was noticeable. He replied that she now seemed much freer than in the palace, and she realized that she had learned a lot thanks to him. Calix congratulated her on her return to society and asked her to be his partner in the first dance. Under the light of the lamps and the gazes of the guests, Aaron realized that she would have refused before, but now she agreed, following the call of her heart. Aaron tells the young gentleman he's holding up well. Hearing this, he asks with a smile if she really thought he was that bad at dancing. The Marquise replies that she's simply never seen him dance before. Calix calmly explains that before he simply didn't have someone he really wanted to ask to dance. Serena notices that His Highness is watching the couple closely and invites him to come out into the hall and dance. The Archduke turns to the lady and says that it was an honor for him to dance with her, after which he gallantly kisses her hand. Serena announces that she's proposing a short break. She informs guests that light snacks, drinks, and a cake personally prepared by Lady Erin, await them in a separate room. The Marquis asks His Highness if he will accompany her. Calix replies that he will wait here, as he believes his brother wishes to speak with him. He also says that he has already asked the servants to fulfill her request. The Duke's mistress asks the maid why the cake hasn't been brought out yet, reminding her that she ordered it to be put out earlier. The head maid, Dasha, apologizes and explains that the maid in charge must have been too busy and forgot. Serena turns to Lady Erin and apologizes, admitting she should have checked. The Marchioness assures her that nothing serious has happened. Her mistress thanks her for her understanding and orders her maid to open the box immediately. At this moment, the protagonist thinks that when the box was opened, everyone would see a cake covered in red liquid. She thinks this is exactly the outcome Serena was hoping for. The Marquis says she sent the cake in advance and asks if Serena checked it herself. Hearing this, the Duke's mistress begins to make excuses, but the head maid answers for her. She says that Madame Serena was busy preparing for the ball and was unable to check everything herself. The box was brought into the hall, and no one has opened it since. Erin is confident that the cake was fine when it was shipped, and suggests that one of the maids may have made a mistake. The protagonist claims it was a sample. Hearing this, the Duke's mistress doesn't understand what she's talking about, and asks again. Erin explains that she brought it personally since she was invited and decided to deliver it herself. She also says that in the note, she indicated that she would prepare a sample in advance. The Marquise adds that if you set out the real cake early, the cream could leak and spoil. She explains that at events in the Imperial Palace, they usually set out replicas and serve the real cake to guests later. The main character says that in such heat, she insisted on a white chocolate decoration. She thought Serena knew about the fake and therefore jumped to conclusions. Erin says she understands the situation, as the lady had never organized an event at the Imperial Palace before and simply didn't know such subtleties. At that moment, a servant brings a real cake into the room, luxurious and exquisite. The protagonist asks Serena if she wouldn't mind removing the fake one, adding that such unpleasant things are best taken away immediately. The aristocrats are curious about the taste of this beautiful cake. After tasting it, they remark that the white chocolate pairs perfectly with the sponge cake, and that the dessert is truly comparable to the work of the Imperial Palace pastry chefs. One of the ladies says that she likes this cake even better because it is not too sweet. Erin asks the Duke's mistress if she liked the taste. She replies that the cake is delicious and thanks Miss Erin. Hearing this, the protagonist calmly notes that she was addressed incorrectly. She explains that in private it's not so important, but at formal events such an address is considered impolite. The Marquise adds that, when living in the Imperial Palace, it is necessary to know and observe the rules of etiquette. Calix asks the Marquise if everything has been sorted out. She replies that everything is fine. The young gentleman notices that she looks pleased. Erin asks how he's doing, and whether he's had to endure any unpleasant words from His Majesty. He replies that it was nothing serious, and asks what she plans to do next, as the ball isn't over anytime soon. The main character says she's going home. The Archduke immediately offers to accompany her. The Marquise thanks His Highness for coming with her today. He replies that there's nothing to thank her for, adding that he found it interesting. He says that next time she's invited to a ball, she can confidently come to him. Suddenly, the girl notices that the carriage is traveling along a different route, completely unfamiliar to her. The young gentleman assures her that they are heading to his estate. Hearing this, the main character is surprised, and he asks why she has that expression on her face. Calix explains that after a ball, it's customary to have a light snack before returning home. Erin agrees, but deep down she wonders if he might have other intentions. She feels his gentleness and care evoke strange, difficult-to-explain feelings. Calix says that he has already ordered the servants to prepare a small treat and hopes that she will like it. Seeing the laid table, the main character is genuinely surprised. The young gentleman asks if she likes it, and the Marquise replies that it's simply magnificent. The Archduke says he asked her to prepare a little bit of everything, as he doesn't know her tastes. She recalls his words about a light supper and realizes that preparing all this was no easy task. The Marquise thinks about how attentive and caring he is. His Highness asks her if the dish is tasty. After tasting it, the girl says the weather is getting hotter, and dishes like this would be perfect for a cafe menu. Calix says with a smile that during this time, she has become a real owner of the cafe, and even now she thinks about him, Hyunsunim. Hearing this, the main character remembers that Hyunsun Im is the formal address for her older brother's wife. She notices that he's calling her that again, although he used to address her as Lady Erin. The Archduke explains that he didn't mean to call her that at that moment. The lady replies that, in any case, today was a very enjoyable day thanks to him, and thanks him again. The Marchioness says she hasn't felt so calm in a long time. She recalls becoming a duchess, living in a palace, getting divorced, buying a cafe, and starting a new life. The main character realizes that too many events have happened in her life in such a short period of time. Calix looks at her and asks what she's so lost in thought. Erin replies that she was simply thinking about the fleeting nature of time and how she couldn't even imagine life outside the palace and her own cafe. She adds that she would have liked to have achieved all this a little earlier, when her parents were still alive. The young gentleman says he has one more gift for her. He explains that he saw it by chance in an antique shop and immediately decided to give it to her the next time they met. The main character sees a music box and suddenly hears a familiar melody in her memory. It seems lost, yet very dear to her. The lady has no doubt that this is the very box her father made with his own hands and gave to her mother. She understands that it is the only one in the world, which they were forced to sell due to debts. Erin asks Calix how he knew about her. He replies that she told him about it herself, even humming the melody, and asks if she remembers. Hearing this, the main character wonders if this happened that night when she baked the lemon cake and they ate it together. Calix asked what the melody was, and she explained it was the Erden's song. Her mother often sang it, and over time, the song was passed down by word of mouth, so everyone has their own unique interpretation. The girl says that it was difficult for her father to write down the notes, but then he made a music box and gave it to her mother. The young gentleman asks if he made it himself and says he was curious to see it. Erin replies that they lost it and it was impossible to see. The surprised Marquise asks if he really remembers all of this. She thinks about how, after her parents' death and divorce, she felt she had lost everything and had to start her life over. The protagonist realizes that the last 9 years have felt empty and meaningless, which has left her heart heavy. She says the young gentleman resembles a wizard. Hearing this, Calix smiles. She says he always helps her when she's in trouble. The Crown Prince replies that in such cases, it's usually said that a person resembles a prince, and adds that the main thing is that she liked the gift. Hyunsunim. The main character asks to be called simply Erin and says that she is no longer his Hyunsun Im. That same day, at the Brennan estate, the Crown Prince asks his brother what he was planning and why he showed up at the ball with Erin. Calix replies that he is not pleased to hear this, and says that she simply asked him to be her partner at the ball. Raymond argues that a woman who only knew palace life could not ask for such a thing. Hearing this, Calix asks what he means, and says that it seems that's exactly how her brother sees her. The Crown Prince asks if he means to say that he knows his wife better than he does. The brother replies that she is Lady Erin, and it is strange to call the man he divorced his wife. At this point, the prince thinks he's tired of them and enters Serena's room, asking if she really invited Erin. His mistress tries to explain something, but he abruptly cuts her off, saying he knows about her attempts to put Erin into eternal sleep. He warns her that this is the last time he will tolerate her antics. Serena says she thought the emperor would allow them to marry without Erin. The prince asks if she really thought the old man would change. He says that even when he didn't have a bride, he didn't have a marriage license, and asks if she's really that naive. Raymond warns his mistress not to touch Erin again without his permission and leaves, leaving her alone. After this, Serena goes berserk, screaming that she doesn't understand who Erin is and recalling that he himself said he was tired of her. In a rage, she starts breaking furniture. The head maid comes into the room and addresses the mistress, saying that there is no need to be so angry and that she will definitely think of something. Hearing this, Serena asks what can be done if the Duke has forbidden touching Erin. The maid suggests changing the method. Serena asks what she means. The maid says that she just needs to be forced to leave the capital herself. Meanwhile, Calix helps the lady into the carriage and asks if she's sure she'll be traveling alone. Erin replies that everything will be fine, since he's assigned an escort, and remarks that he's being overly concerned. Erin thanks the prince for this evening and says that if he stops by the cafe, she'll be sure to treat him to dessert. The Archduke replies that he looks forward to their next meeting. The servant announces that they have arrived. At that moment, the girl notices an unfamiliar carriage parked in front of her cafe. Raymond steps out of the carriage and says she's finally back. He looks at the carriage with Reuten's seal and realizes she's been at Calix's estate all this time. Aaron asks the Crown Prince what brings him here. He asks for a little time, and they go into a cafe. The Marquise asks what business he has come for, and adds that it is already late, and she would like to finish the conversation as soon as possible. The Duke says he heard about the unpleasant situation at the ball, and understands that she has been worried for a long time. He says he wants to reassure her, and promises that it will not happen again. Raymond adds that if it happens again, she should tell him immediately and not tolerate it. Aaron asks if that's all he wanted to say. She thinks about how she's been putting up with all this because of him, and asks him to leave, as it's late and she has a lot to do at the cafe tomorrow. The Duke asks her to wait. At that moment, she thinks he's arrived unannounced, has no sense of propriety, and is completely incapable of caring for others. The main character asks if he needs to be shown where the door is, gets up and leaves. Suddenly, Raymond stops her and says he wants to say something. The Marquise orders her to be released before she calls the guards. The Duke lets go of her hand and says that he came to apologize and did not expect such treatment. The main character wonders if this looks like an apology and asks why he came at such a late hour without warning and expected a warm welcome. Hearing this, Raymond is surprised, and she asks if they are not strangers to each other. The Crown Prince smiles and says he doesn't know himself, since the Emperor still considers them husband and wife. He explains that his father won't accept a divorce without his permission, and even refuses to meet with him on business. The Duke declares that she must come with him to the palace. At that moment, the protagonist understands why he came, and realizes that he doesn't care at all about how Serena treated her. Aaron asks why she must go at his request. She says that legally, everything is already finalized. The Emperor didn't summon her, meaning he's acknowledged the divorce, and promised not to insist on her return. The main character says he initiated the divorce without his father's permission and incurred his wrath. She emphasizes that she is under no obligation to go to the palace. Hearing this, Raymond is surprised and asks why she's talking to him like that. He says she agreed too and asks if she's taking her anger out on him. The Crown Prince claims that Calix told him everything, and that it was she who offered to be his partner at the ball. He asks if it will make her feel better if she angers him. Hearing this, the main character does not understand why he suddenly started talking about this, and says that he acts as if she was forbidden to appear at the ball with Calix. Raymond slams his fist on the table in rage and shouts that it's obvious. He reminds them that they just recently got divorced and asks what everyone will think. Aaron asks if this is the man who brought a mistress to the palace and lived with her before their wedding. He screams, "Is this really the same thing?" The Marquise replies that compared to him, these are completely different things, and emphasizes that she is pure because they are already divorced. The Crown Prince says that even if he allows her to date other men, Calix cannot be one of them. Hearing this, the protagonist doesn't understand why he hates his brother so much, and senses that the reason is much deeper than just a bad relationship. She asks if he's talking about permission. Aaron says it's none of his business who she dates, and that she hates hearing that. She opens the door and asks him to leave. Raymond says he'll come another time. At that moment, the Marquise thinks how tired she is, and how much she wants to go up to her bedroom, take a bath, and go to bed. Suddenly, she hears a strange sound in the kitchen and, curious, goes there. Seeing no one, she decides she must have imagined it. The next morning, Melly wishes her mistress a good day and says that if she was very tired yesterday, she can rest a little today. Aaron replies that she's fine and needs to make 3 more desserts today. She then asks Melly if she's cleaned up the chocolate roses that were lying by the window. The girl says she didn't touch them. She adds that the window was open that morning, and she assumed the lady had cleaned the kitchen herself and rearranged the sweets. The Marquise is surprised and says she didn't open the window. Melly suggests that a cat might have gotten in and eaten the chocolate. Aaron wonders if cats eat chocolate, and briefly considers that some animals might have gotten into the house. A woman who has been there before comes into the cafe and says that last time, they were given 2 desserts and 1 scone. The main character greets Miss Fiona and notes that she's stopped by again. Fiona laughs and says she can't resist such delicious desserts, adding that the dresses are already too small and they'll have to make new ones. Aaron thanks the guest and invites her to sit down, promising to prepare the order. The lady says she wants to take everything with her today and asks for the desserts to be packed. Melly informs the lady that she will be doing the packing today. Miss Fiona remarks how quickly time flies and says the summer festival starts next week. Hearing this, the protagonist can hardly believe how much time has passed so quickly. The capital's summer festival began in early summer and lasted until the rainy season. During this time, the night market on the embankment was particularly popular, attracting merchants from across the empire with rare goods. This festival was attended mostly by commoners, and after moving to the palace, Erin never got to attend. Now, however, she feels she no longer has to worry about what others will say. Fiona asks if the Marquise would like to go to the festival. Erin replies that she would, but isn't sure she has the time. The customer asks who she's going with. The Marchioness says she was thinking of going alone. Fiona immediately declares that watching the festivities alone is no fun and asks if she knows a man for company. At this moment, the main character thinks about how much this woman loves rumors. Erin remembers Calix and his words about inviting him if anything interesting happens. But she knows she shouldn't, as it's not proper for a duke to attend commoners' festivities, and he'll be recognized everywhere. The Marquise thinks that if she suggests going to Melly, she will most likely like the idea, and they can spend the weekend together. Suddenly, a man enters the cafe and asks if she is the owner of the establishment. Erin asks how she can help and notices a brooch with an embroidered tower on his clothes, realizing that he is a low-ranking official. The man says he's the area manager and has come to inspect the sanitation conditions. Erin is surprised to hear this and replies that the cafe recently opened and has already passed all the inspections. The official says he knows about it because the inspection is unannounced. The woman silently notes that unannounced inspections are usually not announced and suggests starting with the kitchen. The stranger says he's curious because the kitchen is outside. Erin explains that the drinks are made inside and there's not enough room for desserts, and she doesn't see that as a problem. The Marquise thinks that after the renovation, the premises could be expanded, but now she doesn't have the funds, so she copes as best she can. Erin shows the kitchen and says that this is where she bakes desserts, glad to herself that she cleaned everything up this morning. The official says everything looks good. The lady offers to take the utensils out of the drawers, but he declines and asks if there's anything else there. The main character thinks that he might want to test the desserts themselves and invites him to try a cake intended for sale. The man sharply objects and says that this is not the point, adding that she is too slow-witted. The official explains that she still doesn't know much, as it's a new business. He says it takes a special kind of dedication to operate in this area, and clarifies that he's not talking about desserts. Hearing this, Erin understands why he came. He's too indifferent to the cafe's condition, and unlike the other inspectors, he has no documents or records. The man says he can't write a good review without her seal of approval, and asks what she will do if he points out the terrible unsanitary conditions. The protagonist asks him point-blank if he's asking for money. The inspector smiles and says she's finally beginning to understand, adding that either money or jewelry would do. The Marquise calmly replied that she understood his hint, but she didn't have a penny to bribe him. She said that if he hadn't come to inspect the cafe, he could leave and write whatever he wanted in his report. The man, raising his voice, declares that if he writes a positive review, the cafe will be closed within a month, and asks if she agrees to this. Erin doesn't understand why he's so angry and reminds him that she told him to do whatever he wants. She asks if he'll get in trouble if he doesn't take the bribe. The protagonist realizes that a bad review could lead to the cafe's closure, but a bribe would create far more serious problems, including prison. She understands that any choice is dangerous. The Marquise understands that if he had come only for money, he wouldn't have staged this spectacle. She says she doesn't know who sent him and asks him to leave and not interfere with the work by dragging her into dirty dealings. Hearing this, the man threatens her that she'll regret it. At that moment, Erin realizes he was paid and realizes who exactly could have arranged this. She remembers that Serena just disgraced herself at the ball yesterday and clearly has no intention of calming down. Erin asks Melly how long she waited and if she had a lot to do. Melly replies that everything was fine and adds that the inspector left with a very disgruntled expression, asking what happened. The Marquise explains everything to her, and Melly is genuinely surprised, not understanding where such people come from. Erin says she's heard of similar cases, where inspectors take bribes, but she didn't think it would affect her cafe. Melly anxiously asks if she's okay and if he's really going to write a bad review. The main character replies that nothing bad will happen, since the owners have the right to defend themselves. She says she'll need to go to the management and explain everything before they issue a closure order. The girl suggests that someone there could be bribed and suggests turning to friends for help, mentioning the Duke, who could quickly resolve everything. Erin feels like she already owes Calix too much and doesn't want to ask him to do this. Hearing this, Melly suggests contacting Mr. Ines, since he is the head of the knightly order and probably has connections in the administration. She adds that he has already sent a gift and, as a friend, he will definitely not refuse to help. At that moment, Ainz enters the cafe and says there was no one behind the counter, so he decided to check if anyone was there. He asks with a smile if anyone was talking about him. Aaron says they haven't seen each other in a while and asks how he's been and if he's too busy. The young gentleman replies that he is doing well and asks how she is doing. Ainz says that he heard about her visit to the ball at the Brennan estate and, having learned about it by chance, decided to visit her, worried about her. Hearing this, the protagonist reflects on how quickly the rumors spread. She says she's fine and the situation has already been resolved, adding that it's Miss Serena she should be worried about. Ainz says he doesn't understand why Serena is still tormenting Aaron. The Marquise replies that she doesn't know either, since she got Raymond just as she wanted. The lady asks if he came just for this and remarks that he has always been very caring. A childhood friend admits he has one more thing he wants to talk about and asks if she would mind going to a summer festival with him. The Marquise is surprised and he immediately explains that there's no hidden meaning. He says a lot has happened lately and it would be good for her to unwind a bit. Ainz adds that if she doesn't want to, she can refuse, and says that her appearance with him could cause unnecessary rumors. Aaron replies that she is ready to go with him and admits that she hasn't walked around the evening market for a long time, offering to go together. The Marquise understands that rumors are possible, but decides not to worry about it anymore. Suddenly, Melly enters the room and excitedly announces that a letter has just been delivered, and a certain gentleman invites the lady to tea. Ainz asks if this letter is from Count Florence. The letter states that the gentleman has heard of her extraordinary cakes, which have appeared at several receptions. He apologizes for the late invitation and asks her to honor him with his presence at the tea party to be held tomorrow at his home. Aaron notices that the letter appears to have been written by the Count's wife and mentions a request. Ainz asks if she knows her. The Marchioness replied that she didn't know the Countess personally and had only seen Count Florence a few times at the palace. His wife rarely attended events, and her request most likely related to the cafe. Ainz asks if she wants him to go with her, explaining that he has time tomorrow and would be happy to accompany her. He adds that he can help if anything unexpected comes up. Aaron agrees to let him go with her. The next day, Aaron arrives at Florence's estate with Ainz. The butler says that their visit is a great honor and sees them out, informing them that the lady is already waiting. Aaron thanks the Countess for the invitation, but she replies that she is grateful specifically to them for the visit. Ainz remarks that it appears the tea party is just for them, as there are no other guests in sight. The Countess explains that she invited only them because she has a favor to ask. She says she's leaving for the capital that evening for 2 weeks, which is why she's rushed to do so. Aaron assures them it's no big deal, and says she brought madeleines and cake, hoping they'll be liked. The Countess thanks her, and says that rumors have been circulating about her desserts for a long time, and she has dreamed of trying them. Hearing this, the main character is surprised, and the lady adds that her cakes are unusual and very tasty. The Marquise modestly replies that there is nothing special about them. The Countess says that many in the capital would like to order desserts from her, and she's one of them. She informs them that there's a birthday ball in 3 weeks, and she needs a special dessert. Aaron asks what exactly she means by special dessert. The woman asks if she's ever been to the southern lands of the continent. Aaron replies no, and recalls that the Kingdom of Artion, which recently opened its borders after a war with the Empire, is located there. The Countess says that everything is correct, and admits that she herself has only visited the south coast once. Hearing this, Ainz asks if she has been to an enemy country. The lady explains that this happened in her youth, when she understood little. Aaron asks if she tried that special dessert there, and reflects on how unfamiliar she is with southern sweets. The Countess says she bought some jasmine flowers a few days ago, and doesn't know whether they are used for tea or added to dishes for their aroma. Aaron admits she's seeing jasmine for the first time. The Countess says the flowers were brought from the south, adding that her mother came from an aristocratic family in the Kingdom of Artion. She explains that, for the sake of public peace, she was officially introduced as an aristocrat from another southern island. The main character thinks that Artion and the Empire have been enemies for a long time, and it is quite reasonable to hide such origins. Aaron recalls that there were people in the palace who tried to reproach her because of her mother's origins from the northern lands. The Countess admits that as a child, she was deeply troubled by her mother's origins. Upon learning of a ship illegally sailing south, she impulsively decided to sail on it. She realizes it sounds reckless now, but back then, She wanted to see her mother's homeland. The southern sea was different from the western one. It had white sand, warm sun, and a stunningly beautiful coastline. The Countess recounts how, while strolling along the sand, she became hungry and went into the first restaurant. She didn't like the food. It was too spicy, salty, and overly savory. But one dessert remained in her memory forever. It had the fresh, sweet taste of peaches, white cream, clear jelly, and a floral aroma that unfolded with every bite. She says she ordered 3 servings, but still couldn't figure out what it was made of. Because she didn't speak the language, she couldn't ask the owner. Erin suggests it might be cream, but the woman counters, saying that the cream was more delicate and resembled frozen milk, without the intense sweetness, shaped like a leaf. She asks if Erin knows this dessert. The Marquise replies that she cannot even imagine what it was, given the strange cream, jelly, and floral scent. The Countess, disappointed, says that she thought so, and adds that she did recognize one seasoning used in the dessert. Erin asks if it's jasmine. The Countess confirms, explaining that after the war ended and trade resumed, this flower began to be imported to the capital. Erin asks to look at the flowers closer and, upon opening the box, smells a rich yet soft aroma, noting that the scent of jasmine is very pleasant. The Countess says that in the South, tea is also brewed from these flowers. The main character thinks such a drink would be a good fit for her café. The woman explains that she's asked chefs to recreate the dessert, but no one has been able to capture both the flavor and aroma. She asks if Erin can create a similar dessert. Erin replies that she's not sure, but the aroma is certainly interesting. She understands that it wouldn't work for dense cakes and suggests making a light cream or pudding similar to the one the Countess described. Ines asks if she has any information about white cream. The Countess replies that she tried various options, but none worked. The young master suggests that this cream may be made from ingredients that are difficult to obtain in the Empire. The woman says it's okay if the result isn't quite right, and asks if Erin can create a dessert that will retain that flavor. Hearing this, the main character thinks she's never come up with a new dessert before, which makes her a little nervous. But at the same time, she thinks the task sounds very interesting. Erin agrees, and says that she will try her best to fulfill this order. The Countess thanks the lady for listening to her and accepting her difficult request. She then says she will repay her generously and is willing to name any amount. The Marchioness immediately objects, saying there's no need. But then she remembers that Count Florence works in the administration. Erin says that if she succeeds in making the desired dessert, she would like to make a request to her husband. Lady asks a childhood friend if he's seen similar flowers in the South. He replies he doesn't recall any and apologizes for not being able to help. Erin says she knows next to nothing about them herself, even though she owns a cafe. Ines asks if there's anything else he can do to help her. Erin asks him to stop by the cafe sometimes and try her desserts. The young gentleman happily agrees and says he'll come every day after work. Hearing this, the girl laughs and replies that it's enough to drop by occasionally, noting to herself that he's handsome and clearly isn't thinking about marriage. Erin reflects that Ains must be getting lucrative offers often. The Marquise says she wants to go to Emery's shop and check if she can buy more jasmine flowers, since the new recipe will require many attempts. Suddenly, the knight hugs the girl and quietly says that he feels like someone is watching them. Hearing this, Erin realizes they're on a crowded street and can't imagine who would be following them. She quietly asks when he noticed. Ines replies that they have been watching them since the moment they stepped out of the carriage. He was skeptical at first, but is now certain they are being watched. When asked how many there are, he says there are about 2 of them, and their movements resemble those of trained knights. The protagonist thinks it might be Serena's men, but understands she would hardly have the authority to deploy the knights. She also doesn't believe Prince Raymond would risk his reputation again. The young gentleman says he doesn't feel threatened and asks what they will do next. The Marquis suggests they change nothing and move on, since if they're simply being watched, then they're unlikely to be in any danger in broad daylight. She adds that she has a hunch. Ains asks what she's talking about, but Erin replies that it's nothing serious and suggests they continue on their way. At Erin's store, they report that the jasmine leaves are already sold out. The salesperson says that Southern products have been in high demand lately. The lady inquires about the next delivery and is told it will take more than a month. Hearing this, she remembers that the Countess's birthday is 3 months away. Ines suggests looking elsewhere. Erin suggests checking out the herbalist's shop on Boyard Street, knowing the alley isn't the safest, but it's light out now and he's nearby. Suddenly, Erin notices Calyx and is surprised. The young gentleman says they unexpectedly met here, but the lady is at a loss to understand what could have brought the Archduke to such a shop. Ainz greets His Highness. Calix asks if he is the leader of the Leflin Order and says he is pleased to meet him and has long wanted to meet him. The knight replies that they met a month ago at the palace. Calix calmly says that he often forgets those who are not particularly important to him. At this point, Aaron senses a tense atmosphere and wonders if they are on bad terms. Calix turns to Aaron and asks what she is doing here and if she came for ingredients. The lady explains that she was going to go to another shop because they didn't have the goods she needed. Calix says he's taking her home because he wanted to talk about something important. He adds that this isn't the best place for conversation and suggests they discuss everything on the way. Aaron apologizes and says that she is not alone today, after which she invites him to stop by the cafe in the evening. Hearing this, Ainz says everything is fine and she can go. At first, she doesn't understand, but he explains that he'll come see her tomorrow. Aaron asks Calix point-blank if he sent the knights to follow her today. He denies it, and then she asks how he knew she was in the shop. Calix replies that the servants told him. Aaron asks how the servants know this, and he says they're guarding her. Hearing this, Aaron declares that it's still surveillance. Calix objects, saying it's security, not observation. He apologizes and explains that he was simply worried, remembering a previous dangerous incident. Aaron thanks him and tells him that Ainz was with her today. Calix replies that he didn't know Commander Leflin was such a skilled knight and would like to test him in a duel someday. Aaron doesn't understand why he suddenly became so unhappy and asks what important matter he wanted to talk about. Calix asks if his brother came to see her. Aaron replies that he was at the cafe after the ball and asks how Calix knew about it, wondering if she's being followed there too. The prince asks what they discussed. Aaron says it was nothing special, just a request to go to the palace and ask the emperor for permission to divorce, which she refused. Calix asks if that was all, and if her brother said anything else. Aaron replies that he left immediately and asks again what Calix wanted to talk about. Calix says that this is also important and informs them that the night market opens next week, suggesting that they go there together. Hearing this, Aaron asks if he had another serious conversation. Calix insists it's important, but she replies that she's already arranged to go there with someone else. Calix says she knows it's Leflin and believes she'll be safe with him. The prince remarks ironically that the head of the order apparently has no work to do, since he can stroll through the bazaar. Aaron senses mockery in his words. When they enter the shop, the clerk asks what the lady is looking for. Aaron asks about jasmine flowers, but is told they're already sold out. The man shows herbs from the southern lands and explains that he ordered a small amount, thinking that they were only needed for perfume and that they were indeed bought by a perfume shop. Aaron says she understands and that there's nothing she can do. She thinks about how she had a hard time finding a place with jasmine, but there's none here either, so she'll have to rely on the night market. Suddenly, the girl notices a bottle with dark petals, which immediately attracts her attention. Upon opening the jar, Aaron smells a strange odor and initially thinks it is agglutination, but realizes it is not, and asks the clerk what it is. The man explains that these are leaves from the Black Forest. He liked the smell, so he put them up for sale, but there were no takers. Aaron thinks she's never been to the northern lands before, and she's sad to leave empty-handed. She takes out some coins and says she'll buy them. Calix notices that she finished quickly and asks if this is why she came here. Aaron replies that she couldn't find what she needed because rare flowers can only be bought abroad and supplies have already run out. The prince asks why she needs such rare flowers. Aaron explains that she needs jasmine for a new recipe, but it's nowhere to be found, adding that it's a commission for the countess. She says she doesn't yet understand what kind of dessert it is and doesn't have a recipe. Then she turns to Calix for help. When they arrive at the estate, Calix says she can use a secret passage to enter and exit unnoticed. Aaron speculates that she could obtain official permission, but it would take time, as only family members are allowed into the Imperial Library. Inside, the girl is surprised by the number of books and thinks that materials about Arteon should be here, since the southern lands have long been considered enemies of the Empire. Aaron searches for books on southern cuisine, hoping to find a clue about the dessert, but after reading several volumes, she finds nothing useful. She is disappointed because she had hoped to at least learn how jasmine is used, and at that moment she realizes that there is almost no time left. Suddenly, she notices a book about the Erdan people and the desserts of different regions. Calix asks what she's looking for. Aaron explains that she's looking for information about southern cuisine and the countess's dessert, but so far without success. Calix asks what the dessert was like. and says he has tried many of the local dishes himself when he was there. Hearing this, Aaron is surprised because it is a hostile state and asks how he got there. Calix replies that it's about the same as the Countess. Aaron asks if he went there secretly. He says that he was not discovered and there were no problems, thinking that if he tells more, she might get angry. Aaron asks if something happened to him there. He admits that he acted too recklessly. The Marquise asks why he's smiling, given that the conversation is serious. Calix says he appreciates her concern and promises to always return safe and sound. Hearing this, Aaron objects and says that it is better not to go to dangerous places at all. Calix brings the conversation back to the main point and asks again what the dessert was like. Aaron describes the white cream on the leaves with a jelly inside and the scent of jasmine, asking if he knows it. Calix says he thinks he tried something similar at the Southport Bazaar. Aaron thinks that's what the Countess was talking about. The prince adds that it wasn't the cream. At that moment, they hear footsteps in the library, and Aaron suggests checking. Calix grabs her hand and hides her in a corner. Aaron doesn't understand what's going on and asks, and he replies that they better avoid the eyes of a certain unpleasant person. They hear a voice assuring them not to worry, and Aaron realizes it is Raymond. Raymond tells the man that this is not what was promised and asks if he didn't promise to bring the right thing. The stranger replies that everything is correct, but only on condition that the agreement is observed. Raymond asks if he wants to break the contract. The man replies that since his part hasn't been fulfilled, there's no other way out, claiming it was he who failed to complete the task. The Crown Prince cuts off the conversation and says they were never on the same page. He adds that if he had wanted to break the contract, he wouldn't have come here in person. The man agrees and says that such a valuable person cannot be abandoned so easily. Aaron thinks Raymond has secretly made a deal with someone, and the conversation seems strange to her. She whispers to Calix that the sudden disappearance has made the situation even more suspicious. And now, they can't leave. Calix says that his brother is busy with an important conversation, and it would be impolite to interrupt him, as would eavesdropping. But it looks like they are already leaving. Aaron notices that it all happened so quickly that she didn't immediately realize how close they were standing, feeling his breath. When everything calms down, she pushes Calix away and tells him he can let her go. She steps away abruptly, her dress brushing against a shelf, and it nearly falls on her if Calix hadn't held it. Raymond hears the noise, comes back and sees them, wondering what they are doing there. The Crown Prince says he will not tolerate this and asks if they understand where they are. Aaron asks him to wait and says it's a misunderstanding. Raymond asks what he saw then and how dare she be there. Aaron thinks that he, as before, does not want to listen to her and asks who brought the mistress to the palace and lived with her. Raymond replies that she's at it again, saying that having a mistress is common among aristocrats. He adds irritably that it's time for her to stop acting like a child. Hearing this, Aaron wonders if he's ever seen her as an equal in 9 years. She says he's misunderstood and declares that she was never his property. The Marquise asks the Crown Prince not to try to control her and not to interfere in her personal life. Raymond gets angry and is about to say something, but Calix stands in front of Aaron and says that he will not allow her to be insulted, even if he is his older brother. The Crown Prince smirks and asks how he dares to speak to him like that. Calix asks if he'll run and complain to his grandfather, reminding him that then he'll have to tell him about the secret conversation in the restricted area. Aaron is surprised, not understanding what he's talking about. Raymond says there's no point in arguing and turns to leave. Aaron asks Calix what he told his brother. He doesn't understand the question, so she asks since when this place has been considered a restricted area. Calix explains that this happened recently, and now even members of the imperial family need clearance. Aaron says they should have warned her beforehand. Calix replies that it was her wish, and he hoped to quickly find the information he needed. He apologizes for what happened, but Aaron assures him that he is not to blame. Aaron asks who was with Duke Raymond. Calix suddenly asks if she'll be sad if her brother dies one day. Aaron is shocked and asks what he means. Calix replies that he is simply reasoning if we imagine that something suddenly happens to his brother. At that moment, the protagonist began to think that the war with the southern lands was already over, and the political situation had long since stabilized. She couldn't understand why he had suddenly brought this up. A nagging doubt arose within her as to whether he really had any interest in the throne, although she had always thought Calix was completely uninterested in power. Aaron caught herself wondering if she'd be sad if Raymond suddenly died. Almost immediately, she answered that she'd probably be glad. She wasn't the least bit concerned about the Duke's fate, and even thought it a waste of time to discuss it. The protagonist turns to the young gentleman and tells him she doesn't want him to put himself in danger. It's also important to her that nothing interfere with her business, as it's been her long-time dream, and she only recently opened the cafe. Calix confidently declares that he will protect her so that nothing happens to her and her dream. Hearing this, the protagonist realizes he's misunderstood her. She meant for him to avoid getting involved in dangerous adventures, but he took her words completely differently. Aaron invites the prince to tell her about the dessert he tried in the southern lands, and reminds him that this is where they left off. Calix explains that the contents weren't cream, but a fruit grown in foreign countries. The lady is surprised, realizing it's impossible to find in the Empire. And if ordered by sea, the journey would take more than a month, and the fruit would certainly spoil. The young gentleman reassures the girl and tells her not to worry. He explains that these fruits can be transported over long distances without harm. Aaron asks if he knows the name of this fruit. The prince replies that he doesn't remember, but he's sure he'd recognize it if he saw it. He then suggests going to the night market together during the summer festival. The Marquise asks if he really doesn't know the name. Calix asks if she doubts his words and explains that he tried the fruit by accident and only remembered its appearance. The main character says she'll go with him to the night market. Hearing this, the boy asks how Chief Lieutenant is. The Marquise replies that she can go with him another day. She adds that she cannot break her promise. Aaron says they'd better get things cleaned up and go. At that moment, she thinks she needs to find another way to get the jasmine flowers. Suddenly, the girl announces that she knows someone who might have a lot of jasmine. She believes it's the Emperor, as he loves tea and is constantly searching for rare herbs. The lady says she's heard that in the south they make tea from jasmine. The Emperor was just an artisan and probably brought back many different varieties. The Marquise decides that she needs to write to His Majesty's senior servant and buy some tea from him. Calix offers to deliver the letter himself, believing it will be faster. Hearing this, the girl is surprised and says she feels awkward asking him to do such a thing. The prince replies that it's not difficult for him and he's always happy to help her. He adds that if anything happens to her, she should turn to him first. The young gentleman looks at the lady closely and asks what's wrong. She replies that she suddenly remembered their youth and finds it hard to believe they've matured so much. Calix says he always wanted to be that kind of person and admits he enjoys taking care of her. On a day off, the main character, lying in bed in the morning, thinks that she hasn't woken up so late in a long time. Aaron realizes that now all she can do is wait for the chief servant to answer about the jasmine flowers. Arriving in the kitchen, the girl decides to make dessert for the countess. Remembering Calix's words, she realizes that there was fruit inside, not cream. Aaron decides to create a jasmine-inspired dessert, but realizes that a cake wouldn't be suitable for capturing the floral scent. A simpler, lighter dessert is needed. She debates whether to add jasmine to a delicate milk blancmange or a pudding with whipped cream. Ultimately, she decides to start with a pudding. Aaron boils the milk, adds jasmine flowers, then sugar and whipped cream, mixing thoroughly. Then she adds the egg yolk, mixes again, and places the mixture in the preheated oven. She cools the finished pudding for about an hour and decides to try the result. Suddenly, the lady hears a voice asking if anyone is home. Opening the door, she sees a girl who announces that she has delivered the fruit she ordered. Aaron recognizes the same girl who came with her sister to pick up the cake. She says they haven't seen each other in a while and asks if she does delivery. The little girl explains that this is her job and she likes it. The lady invites her in and says she'll pay her now. Upon entering, the girl immediately notices the pudding and asks if it is for sale. Aaron replies that she baked it for the first time, just to try it out. The girl says she's never seen anyone make pudding themselves. Hearing this, the main character becomes thoughtful, as pudding is often made at home. She suggests that the girl must have lost her parents early, since she's working at such a young age. The main character asks if she likes pudding and wants to try it. The little girl replies that she didn't take any money with her today. Aaron says there's no need to pay. She explains that she's developing a new menu, and if the girl tries it and shares her impressions, it would be a big help. The girl is surprised and asks if she can really try it. The Marquise brings a clean spoon, offers her some pudding, and says she drizzled it with caramel syrup. The lady also tries the dessert and detects a faint aroma of jasmine. The milk and cream base make the flavor seem too simple. She decides the pudding is a failure and asks the girl how it tastes. The little lady replies that the pudding is delicious, as the sweet caramel and the delicate texture are a perfect combination. She's sure Many will love this dessert." Hearing this, the main character realizes the girl didn't mention the floral scent. It was probably overpowered by the caramel scent. She thinks she should try replacing the cream with fruit. Erin asks if she had any fruit from the southern lands, adding that dried fruit and nuts would also work. The girl replies that there were some strange fruits that no one bought and were most likely thrown out. The Marquise asks if they were white. The little lady replies that they were brown and, in her opinion, probably tasteless. At this moment, the main character thinks that she expected this, because such fruits are difficult to obtain. When the girl leaves, the Marquise decides to return to work on the dessert. Suddenly, the main character hears Ainz calling her and remembers that he was supposed to come by today. The girl asks what he's holding. The guy replies that he brought her a small snack, thinking she hadn't had lunch yet. At this point, Erin realizes that she really hasn't eaten anything since morning, having gotten carried away with desserts. She invites him in quickly and touches him, but suddenly sees the same dark forest as in the shop again. Erin asks what's wrong with him and what exactly hurts. Ainz asks Erin to step away, then writhes in pain and falls to the floor. The girl doesn't understand what's happening. Suddenly, she notices blood on his shoulder and thinks the monster venom might have triggered the attack. She realizes his condition has worsened, as the wound has gotten larger. Erin can't understand why the disease is progressing so quickly, because just recently everything was fine. The Marchioness realizes now is not the time to ponder. First, she needs to hide him. She closes the door, aware that if they learn of his poisoning with the monster's venom, the Templars might seize him and sentence him to death. Suddenly, the poison seems to envelop the girl's hand and gradually disappear. The protagonist doesn't understand what happened, but she thinks the poison in Ainz's body has also disappeared. Erin sees something like a black haze near the wound and decides it's a trick of the light. The lady says she saw the black forest again. She recalls a similar vision in the spice shop and doesn't understand why it keeps happening. She believes the monster's venom is somehow connected to the northern forest. At this point, the protagonist remembers that the ingredients for poison are brought from the north. She suggests that the leaves she bought earlier might help Ainz. Erin realizes she's unsure of the outcome, but she has no other choice. Having picked up the leaves, she's unsure how to use them. The lady takes the milk left over from the pudding and steeps these leaves in it. The Marquise sees that Ainz's condition is deteriorating. She realizes that if nothing is done, he could die, and offers him a prepared mixture to drink. The girl sees that he's had a drink, but there's no reaction. She can't believe it didn't work and desperately wants him to open his eyes. Suddenly, the boy's wounds disappear. Erin can't understand how this is possible, as she's heard there's no cure for monster venom. She thinks the black leaves must have been effective. Erin notices a pattern at the wound site. When she touches it, the pain subsides, and the visions disappear. The girl thinks it's good that the leaves didn't cause any side effects, but she doesn't understand why this sign appeared. At this point, the Emperor asks who left the flowers. The servant replies that Prince Calyx arrived that morning. His Highness asks if Raymond has come, and from his reaction, he realizes he hasn't. He says the son doesn't even remember the day his father died, and invites the priest to tell him everything about his grandson. The Emperor asks if he thinks Raymond still has special qualities. The man replies that nothing has changed and then asks about Miss Erin. His Majesty explains that her grandson kicked her out. He says Raymond tried to apologize in every way possible, but she won't even listen. The Emperor says Raymond believes he's tormenting him. He adds that he would like to tell him the whole truth, but he can't until he shows signs of being an heir. Suddenly, His Majesty notices a laid table and asks the priest what it is. At this point, Serena greets the head of the empire. The priest replies that he knows nothing about it. The lady says she heard he skipped meals for the temple, so she prepared a feast. She modestly adds that her skills are insufficient, but asks him to sample the dishes made with all his heart. The emperor turns to the priest and says this is a sacred place. Then he asks how an unholy maiden could have been allowed in. Hearing this, the lady realizes that he's talking about her. She can't understand whether her relationship with Raymond is considered defiling. Serena turns to His Majesty and tells him he hasn't liked her for a long time. She asks why. Because she wants to know the truth. The lady asks if this is due to her lowly origins. She says she has spent the last 7 years trying her best to serve Prince Raymond. Serena states that if he agrees, she will perform duties and handle palace affairs no worse than Miss Erin, and perhaps even better. Hearing this, the emperor is surprised and asks what nonsense she is talking about. His Majesty says neither birth nor ability matter here. He claims Serena grew up in prosperity but chose to become Raymond's mistress, and the whole world knows it. He doesn't understand how such a woman could be made empress. Serena replies that he refuses her only because she has been with the prince all these years. The emperor orders his servant to take her away and not let her back here. Hearing this, the lady turns to his majesty in despair, crying out that he didn't even give her a chance. She says she's loved Raymond since childhood and doesn't understand why he didn't choose her. The emperor states that she could not have claimed this position from the very beginning and advises her to abandon this idea. When Serena is taken away, His Majesty thinks she is a meddlesome girl and does not understand how his grandson could live with her. The emperor believes he raised him as heir to the throne from childhood, but he constantly disappoints him. This applies to power, heritage, and marriage. The priest asks what Prince Raymond will do without Miss Erin. The emperor replies that the Duchess must be returned. His Majesty says that Raymond claims that he will never return to the palace, but he understands that Erin is necessary for him. At this point, Ainz thinks he needs to escape as quickly as possible. He understands that if he is caught, he could die. The boy realizes he needs help, but doesn't know where to turn. He thinks he's only causing trouble for everyone. Ainz opens his eyes and sees Erin. The Marquise, relieved, says that thank God he's awake. The young gentleman asks, surprised, where he is. The protagonist explains that after he lost consciousness, she and Melly carried him to her room. She adds that no one knew about the wound, and she washed the stained shirt. Hearing this, Ainz says that it is because of him that she has so much trouble, and admits that he is indebted to her again. Erin replies that nothing terrible happened. She says he must have been having a nightmare, and she tried to wake him up. The main character asks how he feels and what happened to his wound. The boy replies that he doesn't feel anything. Unbuttoning his shirt, he sees that the wound has disappeared, leaving only a strange mark. Erin says it's too long to explain. She tells him she gave him black leaves, after which the wound disappeared and a symbol appeared in its place. The girl asks why the wound suddenly got worse. Ainz replies that he doesn't know, but he clearly remembers it healing. He adds that he's never even heard of such a sign. The main character asks if he'll stay with her for a while. She's worried he might have another attack and thinks it would be best if he stayed with her until they're sure everything is okay. The Marchioness says she has a spare room. It's a little cramped, but there shouldn't be any serious discomfort. Erin admits that she is still worried about the leaves she gave him, and she thinks that might be the problem. Ainz takes the girl's hand and asks why she thinks so. He says that without her help, the poison would have already plunged him into eternal sleep, and therefore he is sincerely grateful. The young gentleman says that if his presence helps her feel calmer, he will stay. He asks her not to blame herself. The guy adds that the mark on his body doesn't cause any discomfort at all. On the contrary, he feels something strangely pleasant. Erin explains that the pharmacist who sold the medicine brought it from the north. She believes the incident may be related to the Black Forest, and the leaves may be an ingredient in the medicine. She decides to find the pharmacist and question him. Ainz says he's sure she'll feel much better once she knows the truth about the black leaves. Hearing this, the main character understands that Ainz is probably scared too, but he still thinks about her first. The guy says he's going home for a bit. The girl immediately asks why. Ainz explains that he'll order the servants to tidy up the house with the greenhouse, as his presence there won't arouse suspicion. The Marquise understands and thanks him for his foresight. The young gentleman says that compared to what she's done for him, this is mere trifles. He promises to return soon, and the girl wishes him a safe journey and hopes nothing happens to him. Erin thinks about the disturbing detail she never told him. When the poison touched her hand, it vanished immediately. She didn't eat the black leaves or take any medication, but she doesn't understand why the poison had no effect on her. The protagonist realizes that, unlike Ainz, she has no mark on her body. The thought seems unreasonable, but it occurs to her that the reason for her healing may be connected to herself. The next day, the girl remembers how worried she was about Ainz, but realizes that he's fine today and has truly improved. She decides to return to work at the cafe. Upon entering, Erin doesn't immediately understand where everything has gone. Soon she finds a note from Ainz, saying he's gone to Boyard Street and will be back soon. The main character guesses that he went to look for a pharmacist. Melly is probably already making drinks, which means it's time for her to start making desserts. Erin decides to start with scones and strawberry cream cake. Then she remembers the chestnut paste left over from last time and decides to make a Mont Blanc. While the almond base bakes in the oven, she mixes whipped cream with the chestnut paste for the filling. The girl thinks it's much easier to work with ready-made ingredients. Making the paste herself would take too much time, but now she fills the molds with cream, and the Mont Blanc is ready.